R4.
Jacob, I'm sorry. Could you move the mic closer to you?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
From R6 CU and R4 to RX3 CU and R10 CU. Apologies that the R10 is not there. The R10 would be applying on the eastern side of Trailwood Drive for the site, while the western side would be rezoned to RX3. Again, this is the general location of the site. The western side, again, would be the RX3. Eastern side would be R10, the side closer to Centennial Campus. There is a new set of conditions that have been proposed with this application since it was last heard. The first condition, the intent of this, it's long, but the intent is that an area of floodplain will not be smaller in size for future development than that approved with a previous site plan. So the idea is that the area of floodplain will remain the same between previous approved site plans and this project on this property that has floodplain on site. The second condition is a requirement for a minimum of 50% building frontage along Trailwood Drive for the western site, the RX3 site, and that's running from a point on the following attachment. And then finally, a requirement for a minimum of one street-facing pedestrian entrance on Trailwood Drive. Some of the conditions that were removed include the greenway connection through the floodplain that was discussed, and that the others have been modified. This is the attachment that would go with those conditions that lays out the location of the floodplain. Staff has some concerns, not with the intent of these conditions, but with the enforcement, not the ability to enforce them necessarily, but the difficulty of understanding exactly what this exhibit is saying. So, proposed zoning has changed, as I said, from all RX3 to RX3 and R10CU. That's reduced the maximum total units from 257 to 203, and has modified some of the setbacks on that R10 zoning parcel. The request is still inconsistent with low-scale residential, although R10CU is consistent, so it brings it closer in line, but overall the application itself is still inconsistent. No change to urban frontage, and the comprehensive plan analysis has remained unchanged and consistent with the future land use map, consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, some of the consistent policies we discussed last time include capitalizing on transit access, housing availability, and things like that. Again, inconsistent policies are the future land use map and then infrastructure impacts to fire service. As I said, the outstanding issues today are the revised request and unsigned conditions need some clarification, as they would result in difficulty with enforcement, and then mitigations would be to continue to provide staff and work with us to address those concerns. Your deadline for action is April 25th, and upcoming meetings of the 24th. And if approved, it would require a future land use map. Thank you.
Thank you. We heard from the applicant and the public at our last meeting, but could I see by show of hands if there's anyone here who wishes to speak on this item today? I see the applicant. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Support or opposition? Okay, so that's one person and the applicant. I'll give, without objection, an additional 3 minutes per side.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Bennett, members of the Commission. Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of the applicant. I will not go through these changes that were made and that contrast with the current zoning. You heard a fair bit of that from staff, and with 3 minutes, I'll focus on other topics. I will briefly note there is no opposition to staff's additional comments. We had sort of reached agreement Wednesday of last week as far as the changes that needed to be made. There was concern about whether smaller also meant the the protected area couldn't move. I'm not sure why those were confusing, but there's been a request to change that, as well as to be more clear about the exact area. Apparently, the attachment we discussed on Wednesday by Friday afternoon was not going to be sufficient. We don't oppose those changes. We just ran out of time to make them and have them evaluated by the engineers. So no real issue there. What I would like to focus on today, I don't know if there's a representative here from Partners for Environmental Justice. I hope there is, because we understand a new letter was submitted from that group, and I also had a conversation with the representative there. I wanted to address the three concerns that I have about that letter. First, the letter mentions that the current zoning has fewer stormwater protections than the earlier approved plan for the site. This claim makes it sound as though a greater number of zoning conditions automatically means better stormwater protection. That's simply not the case. In this case, for example, two examples actually, removing that greenway connection from the existing conditions today will remove lots of required grading, cutting down of trees, and adding paved surfaces. It's actually better for stormwater protection. Also, some of the old conditions aren't needed anymore. They're already built into the new proposal. For example, in the existing conditions today, there is a minimum protected area of the site. That minimum protected area was in place when the no-rise study that was approved set a certain amount of fill that was permitted. We have taken that fill that was developed under the existing regulations and set it as the floor for the ceiling rather for the new proposal, so that we can only improve from that point. So it's all baked in. So we were able to take some of those standards out. I will also note my second concern, which is that this letter, consistent with my conversations with the representative, doesn't say that the current zoning is in any way better than that's being proposed here. What I heard when asked this question, right, I heard that there's opposition to the new zoning. So I tried to get to the bottom of what is it about the new zoning that is somehow worse than the existing zoning? And the answer was, that's not the position that's being taken here. The idea is, and the understanding is, that under the current zoning, the property simply won't develop. And that's consistent with that first letter that you received. Sorry, checking time. And so, being a longer-term concern, stormwater can be addressed globally rather than opportunistically, one applicant at a time. The city has all the rights it needs in order to regulate that watershed in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now, excuse me. Now hear from the opposition. You also have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Can't say it's great to be here again, but I appreciate everyone's time. I'm John Totten. I live at 1132 Trailwood Drive, and I think this proposal continues to grow. I mean, we've gone from an approved, previously zoned R6 for 2 of those properties, where we were going to have 40 townhomes. We have since moved to additional property. We have up to, I believe it's 256 potential units now. The maximalist approach that the applicant is continuing to drive in the sensitive area is something that the neighborhood has concerns about. We want this property to be developed, but we want it to be developed with some level of limits. We are still trying to understand the maximum. Even though we've seen 256, we don't understand if that includes bonuses for height. So I think that we are constantly sort of behind the 8 ball here in terms of understanding like how a constant push for increased density on a sensitive area is going to benefit the collective community. We have a lot of diversity in this area in terms of the R10 establishment across the street. We have the little, the NCOD that is represented where most of the residents live, are surrounded by development. So when there's a constant push to maximize in sensitive areas, right, the whole topography of this area is very, is very hilly. And, the townhome proposal, Z22-2023, that was previously submitted and approved, even that included cutting off the top of the hillside, clear cutting the entire property of anything outside of the floodplain zone. I think we're just, struggling to understand how a maximalist approach to developing something that is currently undeveloped is the right way to go. Especially when there's been good faith negotiations beforehand. And I think the applicant's attorney has characterized us as being unwilling to negotiate. That is not true. This process doesn't exactly allow for a lot of back and forth negotiation. It's like, are you for or against? Not are you for with changes or are you against unless changes are made? Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the table, commissioners. Questions about the revised conditions for staff, the applicant? No questions?
I guess it sounded like the applicant was okay with making changes, but I'm just curious why the staff feels like that would be difficult to enforce. If I could get just a little bit more detail on that.
I'll let our stormwater staff answer the stormwater concern, and then I can go back to the frontage.
Sally Hoyt, Raleigh Stormwater. So we have actually multiple concerns with this condition. First of all, it is not an equivalent condition. If the applicant wished to show no impact to the floodplain, they could continue to commit to a no rise. That is how we evaluate floodplain impacts. Looking at the footprint of disturbance could still result in floodplain impacts. So that's one piece. Also, we are concerned about the reference to the SPR and a not high quality map. We think that if they do indeed want to commit to an area that they limit the area they would disturb in the floodplain, that's a thing. They could commit to that, but then just list the area, and that would be much easier to regulate than having to refer back to a previous map. Also, we have a concern because we've seen other rezoning conditions related to floodplain happen where a time lapse happens between when the conditions are made and when the development comes to fruition. And in the meantime, the maps change. So what could happen is that the floodplain limits could increase on this lot. And so then they could go from, let's say under the previous SPR, they were impacting 5,000 square feet of the floodplain. If the floodplain limits change, that same boundary could be 15,000 feet of impact to the floodplain. So that's why we think that if they want to do this based on area, which again is not the same as no rise, but if they want to do a condition based on area, it should be the amount of area impacted in the floodplain. Thank you.
Where is Raleigh in the floodplain restudy cycle? How far out are we from new floodplains?
We are fairly far, like we have not started a restudy.
Okay.
So, but we have encountered the situation where floodplain related conditions from 20 years ago.
Yeah, they can stay a
are
long
now
time.
under
Yeah,
development.
okay. All right, thank you.
Sally, could I ask another question? Do you have a proposal that you feel like would work well? It sounds like maybe just abiding by a no-rise study.
That it would be the equivalent to the previous condition. Mm-hmm. If instead the applicant doesn't wish to do that, but does wish to do something based on area, we would recommend they define the area that was impacted in the previous SPR and commit to impacting no more than that amount.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I can just clarify the concern with the frontage. Might be easier to show on the map. Simply, it's just that there's not existing lot lines on the proposed example, and to establish what 50% from this line to the property edge would just require overlaying other maps to determine where that space was.
So the applicant has had their one bite at the apple in front of us. So if they were to revise conditions, that would have to happen before council. So we have to make a decision, vote, recommend approval, denial, approval with changes, denial with changes, but we need to vote on it today. So if there are no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Anyone?
Well, I'm certainly not comfortable approving it as it is with the concerns from the city staff. I really appreciate the removal of the greenway through the floodplain. I think that's a better condition than what they have right now. So I'd hate to lose that, but I'm not sure what I would approval with any changes, what those changes would be other than following the no-rise floodplain. Maybe we can talk about that for a second.
So you could make a motion to approve with the requested changes by staff.
Yeah.
You could make a motion to deny and say it's because these changes haven't been made and staff has these concerns. So either way, we can let council know that we have these concerns, whether it's a vote for approval or denial. Yes, Commissioner Omakaye.
Just so I'm clear, even if they make the changes, they're not necessarily enforceable. Is that correct?
I think with the changes that Sally was recommending, they could enforce those. They're concerned about the way the condition is currently written. So if they make the changes, it would address the concerns about enforceability. Would anyone like to make a motion before I draft someone?
Is it appropriate at this point? I feel like we've done it before to ask the applicant. I think the hesitancy is there's a handful of us that are in favor of this rezoning, but have some concerns about the condition. But if the applicant's not willing to entertain those conditions, there's no. I'm not certain. I think that will change people's minds about which way they lean. So I guess is that appropriate?
We have not closed the public hearing yet, so you could ask that simple question, then bring it back to the table for commissioner discussion, and then close the public hearing.
So yes, you can ask the
Okay.
applicant.
I'd like to ask the applicant if they'd be willing to entertain revising the conditions per staff's recommendations.
Absolutely. And I know that a couple of our commissioners weren't here to hear this part of the discussion, but we had some inefficient communication last week where we sort of heard one thing on Wednesday, responded to that by adding the attachment, by adding some language that was requested, and then learned fairly late on Friday afternoon that was not sufficient, and we couldn't pull together the engineering team fast enough to get that sorted out. So yes, we don't disagree with what they're looking for. Happy to add those things. I think we are basically on the same page with what needs to happen with respect to that frontage issue. I don't think we were clear that was actually an issue. We were happy to define that another way and get to the same place as well. We think both of these are really more about how we say it than what we're saying. Happy to do that.
That helps me a good bit. I think that I would hate to miss this opportunity to have a better plan in place just from an administrative snafu. It sounds like they're right on board with what we were hoping to hear from our last meeting. So I would be willing and interested to make a motion.
Okay. Just Commissioner Omakaye.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to understand how, really never mind. I don't necessarily feel comfortable with this. I do still have questions about the floodplain issues and how enforceable those are once we get past us to city council. I mean, many things can be said here to us about what they're going to do, but the same way we voted in other cases to make sure that we're preserving environment and not putting residents in potential risk, I think should take precedence over developing in the area.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think my understanding of this proposal is that it's better than what they can do by right now, especially with the greenway cutting through. And so I think it's the best option in front of us. So, anyway, with that, I'd move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated March 10th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment. This recommendation also includes an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Do you want to add a note about them?
Yeah, how would I say that? Sorry, I'm kind of new at this part.
I think it would be sufficient just to say, and the Planning Commission would like to see the applicant during the council process adopt staff's recommended changes.
Yeah. And the Planning Commission would like to see the applicant during city council meeting adopt staff's recommendations.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner O'Haver?
Not about the case. I know we're trying to do better about when we can make comments and not. And since my time is close to rolling off the Planning Commission, I just want to point out that I think a note to council, I think the idea of having one opportunity to make revisions makes sense because we were doing multiple revisions. But here's a situation where they get one shot at it. I feel like applicants rush to get in the next Friday. And it's just, this isn't the most efficient way to do it. So since I'm getting ready to roll off, I just want to make that comment and put it on record. Like, I think we've gone too far one way, and I think we need to put a little bit more, not this particular applicant, but in general, we just say, oh yeah, we'll see you next Friday. But the fact that you've got to have comments in by Friday and then there's a snafu and here we are on Tuesday, it's not working. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Staff agrees with you, and we've been working on process changes. We had some in the previous omnibus that ended up not going forward, but we will be rebringing those to adjust the process. We agree with you. The timing it's just challenging for all parties. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
I didn't know if that was the right time to say that.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
All in favor?
Okay.
All opposed? That's 3 opposed. Commissioner Omakaye, you've expressed why you were opposed. Commissioner Fox? I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to state why you're opposed.
No, it's actually for the same reason the additional comment was tagged on to the motion. So I believe that covers it.
Okay, and same for me. So that was 6-3? 7-3. Thank you, and thank you all for attending. Next, new business. Before we get started on new business, I want to explain some clarifications of our procedures. These are intended to make sure we hear from everyone, the applicant, those in support, those in opposition, that commissioners have an opportunity to ask questions of everyone who has spoken, and that we maintain a structured and orderly process. So, we'll receive a presentation from staff, as we always do. Then I will officially open the public hearing. Each side will have 10 minutes to speak. We'll begin with the applicants and those in support. We'll then hear from those in opposition. We'll reserve whatever time is left for each side. While the hearing is still open, I'll ask commissioners to ask any questions they have of staff, the applicant, and the public, members who have commented. This won't be the time for comments, but rather questions from the commissioners. This is also the time we'll ask the applicant if they are willing to add or revise conditions. These questions will not count against the 10 minutes for each side. After we've asked our questions, we'll do one of two things. We'll bring the item back to the table and close the hearing for our discussion and vote, or bring the item back to the table and leave the hearing open if we are deferring the case for additional information or changes to conditions. If the hearing is left open, whatever time is remaining for each side will carry over to the next meeting when the item is heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no more questions or public comments. Is that clear? All right. Let's move forward. We'll try it out with our first new business item. Rezoning Z1525, which is Auburn-Knightdale Road and Battle Bridge Road. We'll hear from staff.
Good morning, Chair Bennett, members of the Planning Commission, Matthew Burns with Planning and Development. This is a request to rezone a 24-acre portion of from residential 4 to industrial mixed use 5 stories with conditions. This portion and this underlying property is jointly owned by Wake County and the City of Raleigh, and your deadline for action is May 9th. So the greater property, 7800 Battle Bridge Road, is a piece of satellite corporate limits, and zoning to the west and southeast of that property is Wake County, whereas to the northeast and southwest is zoned City of Raleigh and in our city limits. So this rezoning site is part of the Raleigh Farm, which consists of 2 properties, just over 400 acres. Both parcels are jointly owned by the City of Raleigh and Wake County and subject to an interlocal agreement. But just to be clear, what is being requested to be rezoned is a 24-acre portion of the southern property. There's a zoomed in version. The dotted line is the greater parcel. So both Raleigh properties are undeveloped, and the site and the greater tract abut rural residential uses and some agriculture and forestry uses to the south. Here are some views of the site from Auburn-Knightdale Road and Battle Bridge Road. And there are 2 proposed zoning conditions. The first would restrict maximum development intensities across use mixes. And the second would exempt the site from the block perimeter requirements of the UDO. For a little bit more context about the Raleigh Farm, the properties were acquired in 2005, and they are subject to that interlocal agreement, which governs the use and future planning on the site. Properties were subdivided in 2007, and in 2024, the ILA was amended. And so that interlocal agreement really describes what can be done with either property. So the northern tract is for exclusive use by the City of Raleigh and may be used for a regional fire training facility, and the southern tract is for exclusive use by Wake County and could be used for a school and or an animal shelter, which is what they're interested in building on that 24-acre portion. I'll note that the animal care outdoor use is within the commercial umbrella of the UDO and only permitted in 3 zoning districts, including IX. And so upon rezoning approval, Wake County would have to pursue a special use permit in order to develop the site for an animal shelter. So going from a residential 4 to an industrial mixed use district would increase the maximum number of units that could be built on the property. And it would result in an increase in entitlement for office, retail, and industrial. But again, those are capped based on the proposed conditions. So the site has a lower walk score than average, lower transit score than average, lower bike score than average, and below average access to jobs. And the site is not served by transit. So the request would add to the housing supply, does not include subsidized units, does not permit a variety of housing types, would allow smaller units, and again, is not served by transit. And the reason for not permitting a variety of housing is that the industrial mixed-use district is quite restrictive as far as what types of buildings can be constructed. Area residents are more likely to be minorities compared to the city average, less likely to be low income, and the cost of rent has increased between 34 and 40% compared to the citywide average of 26. So this site has 4 future land use designations on it, and the requested industrial mixed-use district is inconsistent with community mixed-use, moderate-scale residential, low-scale residential, and public parks and open space. The request is consistent overall with urban form guidance. While there is no frontage proposed, the area is car-dependent, and an animal shelter is not necessarily representative of a typical mixed-use development, where an urban frontage would be desired. So the request is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan, inconsistent with the future land use map, and consistent with the urban form map. Consistent policies are related to large site development, commercial development impacts, community facilities, interjurisdictional coordination, the Southeast Special, and some policies specific to the Southeast Special Study Area. So inconsistent policies are related to the future land use map, zoning and infrastructure and response time for fire, and a Southeast Special Study policy which speaks to rezoning of sites that are larger than 75 acres. If this request is approved, it will result in a future land use map amendment to change those 4 designations to public facilities. So that's what it would look like on the map. There are no outstanding issues, and your deadline for action is May 9th. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Each side will have 10 minutes. We'll first hear from the applicant and those in support.
Good morning. My name is Zach Pierce, landscape architect with CLH Design. Really excited to bring this project forward to the commissioners. We will go over some of the introductions, existing zoning, kind of that need for the new animal center, examples of modern animal centers, and then some of those conceptual renderings. We have representatives here from Wake County. This is a Wake County facility. We have also representatives from R&D Architects. The existing zoning, like Matthew went through already, is as you see here, but we are focusing on that corner at Battle Bridge Road and Auburn Nightdale. So currently that R4. And that future land use map, yes, it was a community mixed use, residential, public parks, but you can see that active red corner is really where we're focusing the rezoning effort. A predominantly open space right now, really not a lot of wooded area at the corner here. There is an existing pond, but it has been determined that it's not jurisdictional. The project site, their road really is just 2-lane roads right now. There will be improvements as development comes out here, at least with road widening on our side of the Auburn-Nightdale Road and a little bit of road widening on Battle Bridge Road just along our road frontage. But we acknowledge that the growth will be seen along both of these roads as Wake County continues to grow. We are just looking at approximately 24 acres right at the corner. We did have the neighborhood meetings, both neighborhood meetings. In the first neighborhood meeting, there was some significant concerns about the industrial mixed-use zoning on the whole 110 acres, about what could be all those allowable uses on industrial use. So we went back to the drawing board and kind of scaled it back down to and worked with city staff as well to just focus it just on the area for the proposed animal center. The remaining would be R4. So we just wanted to, and then we presented that at the following neighborhood meeting and seemed to have answered some of their questions. So really some of that need for the animal center, Wake County is as we all know, is growing. This really, with the population growth, there's more pets, more strays, more demand for services. This original facility that was built in 1998 was for a much smaller community. So the animal center sees thousands of animals every year. So right now there's limited space for intake, medical care, quarantine, and adoption areas. Right now, this overcrowding can create stress for the animals and staff. So with you'll see us show you some photos here of the modern animal center. Has a better disease control, isolation areas, and veterinary care. Reduces the stress on the animals, improving the adoption outcomes. Also strengthens the county and city's ability to respond to emergencies, cruelty investigations, and disaster situations. The new facility will have more adoption space, foster coordination, and community programs. These programs help keep pets with families whenever possible, but also this facility will help strengthen partnerships between rescues, veterinarians, and volunteers. The animal centers are an essential public service, just like libraries, parks, public safety facilities. This new animal center will continue that responsible pet ownership, education, and humane care. We want to make sure that this facility, where it lands right here, is meeting the current and future needs for decades to come. So really, we feel this location is appropriate for long-term service of Wake County and all residents within Wake County, as some municipalities bring the animals to this facility, including the city of Raleigh. So components of a modern, we're just showing some, this is similar components of a modern animal center. Very different than sometimes what you may perceive as an animal center. It has changed. Really welcoming, a lot of light, have outside exercise areas to reduce the stress on the dogs. The dogs will not be kept outside at night. They will be inside at night. When they are in some of the gathering areas, there are staff outside. There are some dog kennel runs. Some of the kennels do have some outside areas for those who are staying a little longer, but we do create a resilient surface with the turf, some shade, really a comfortable area to help reduce. They have the fans, so really creating that lower stress environment to improve the adoption rates, and then also just the well-being of the animals. We have some important, there'll be just going to be some separation between the kennels and the corridors. Really, again, increase the viewing, but helps reduce some of the stress and some of the disease control for the animals. Food prep and medical prep areas are going to be enhanced. Surgery facilities will be greatly improved, and the opportunities to have the surgeries in this facility. Now we have other animal facilities have more of a small animal areas. We do have area for more of like a catio or some areas to meet with right here for the cats as well as the dogs. So we will see an increase about almost doubling the amount of dog kennels and significantly increasing the amount of cat condos as well. A conceptual rendering, some of the comments that we got for the second neighborhood meeting where we'd like to see some conceptual images. These were images that were presented to the Wake County Commissioners. So this is all what we see. There will be 3 separate entrances for the public. This is an overall one looking really on the public side. And then the site plan, we are focused on that corner of Auburn-Knightdale and Battle Bridge Road. To the north of the building is that community side and volunteers. We have a secure, fenced and gated area in the back for animal services and maintenance and staff. So that is back of house. The outdoor dog areas are focused on the back side, which is lower than the road. The grade falls significantly from the roads down to the pond. So we are situating some of those dog areas towards the back because that was some of the concerns as well, but we are focusing that away. We are looking at on-site stormwater management and a walking trail that the volunteers can walk the dogs within a fenced-in area as well. Again, the animal center is walking dogs now. The volunteers are, again, to have that health and wellness of the animals, but here we're able to have this on-site on a safer piece than what they're dealing with right now. So really focusing on that community aspect of this facility, very important for the growth of the county and the residents. But really excited to bring this forward to you and here to answer any questions you may have. I guess I can yield to the other side.
Thank you. We'll reserve 2 minutes, 8 seconds. Next, we'll hear from the opposition. You have a total of 10 minutes. Okay. Seeing none. Commissioners, we'll get back to the table for questions. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. So, as I understand it, the request is for an animal shelter, which is depicted in all of the imagery as being a large one-story building. I'm wondering if someone could walk me through the rationale of the request for 5 stories.
Yeah, we had the 5 stories to reduce, because when that has the industrial mixed use as a whole site, there was a potential for a school which would exceed the height sometimes with multi-story. So we did have that. That was before we kind of shrunk it down for the facility. You're correct. This is a 1-story facility. It is not proposed to any future expansion to go up, but it was really whenever we were looking at a potential, like the ILA says, that could have been a school, so the higher bay, multiple floors for that.
Additionally, just while I have you there, if I might, there's also the request to remove the block perimeter standards. Can you walk me through that one?
Sure. Yeah, we have the very important part of having the secure back area for the animal center. So we wanted to make sure we wanted to have the public where they were the most safe and appropriate on the north side of the building. And we were focusing this rezoning on that tighter corner. Any other future development through the R4 portion of that can have that potential of the block perimeter, but this focused area, we wanted to be very intentional on where we had the public and where we had staff.
Okay, maybe it's a question for staff of what the block perimeter standards would, how that would impact a development like this. I guess just walking through what the standard is.
Good morning, Carter Robertson with Transportation. I think the block perimeter would come up more looking at the whole site included in the interlocal area. And we have different standards based on what the zoning is. The IX would be a tighter block than R4 as it currently is. I believe it goes from about 8,000 to more like 3,000 feet as a total block. We received this request. They supplied the concept plan we're looking at here and a description of how access would be achieved absent of block perimeter. We found this to be satisfactory. Also to note, east of this pond, there will be I-540, the extension running right along. So that kind of limits the block east of this site. If we're looking south at the rest of the site, we still believe that we could get a parallel facility to Auburn-Knightdale without this site being included in that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Makaye.
I did have the same question as Commissioner Fox about the height, and felt a bit uncomfortable about that, especially if that's not what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So just ahead of time, I would feel comfortable definitely supporting this as long as we had a condition to bring the height limit down from 5 stories.
Is that something the applicant is willing to look at revising the height?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Walters.
I just had a question for staff. Are there any other zoning categories that, as far as you can see what's being proposed here, that would work?
Yeah, so there are two animal care commercial uses in the UDO. There is animal care indoors and animal care outdoors. The indoor use is permitted in a wider variety of zoning districts, but it's still restricted. Animal care with an outdoor component is only allowed in agricultural productive, heavy industrial, and industrial mixed use. And I think there are three zoning districts that we don't see every day, especially heavy industrial and agricultural productive. But in order to have that outdoor component, the UDO pigeonholes you into one direction or another to be able to do that use with a special use permit. So even if this rezoning were approved, they would still need to go to the Board of Adjustment at a quasi-judicial hearing to request that special use.
Mm-hmm. So there are three categories that have outdoor use, and this is the latter of those that you listed.
Yes. So industrial mixed use is generally less intensive than heavy industrial. Permits many more uses than agricultural productive, which typically has very limited residential uses permitted, no industrial uses for the most part permitted. So
this industrial mixed use category is the most sensible in many
I would
ways.
say so. It's probably the middle of the road between those two extremes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Cochran?
So this is a question for the applicant or the county, I guess. If we build this facility, are there other animal shelters that are going to be decommissioned as a result?
Good morning. I'm Patrick McHugh with Wake County Facilities Design and Construction. I'm the project manager for the project. Currently, we have not decided what we're going to do with the existing facility, but the intent is to fully move to the new facility, with just unknown what we're going to do with the existing.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question that of what I'm getting to. I think there are some biohazards associated with the waste produced by these facilities. Is there measures in place to keep that or do in-process decontamination, or will the other sites have to be remediated after they're vacated?
Currently, their process is they physically remove the solid waste and put it into the landfill. Basically, it's put in the trash, and then they're just washing down the residuals through the drain. I'm not familiar with any biohazards.
So it's not washing into like that adjacent pond. It's not going to.
No.
Things are okay. That.
That's going to the sewer system.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Maybe I need another cup of coffee, but I'm questioning my directional acuity here. This is the northern tract, correct?
No, it's this other one. Let me go back to, wait, one more.
The top, that's not north?
North of the
This
south.
is the north of Battle Bridge is the one that the city of Raleigh in that interlocal agreement is looking for a higher training center.
So it's not the south of the site?
You are on the south side, so the Randley
This
Farm
is county.
is on the
Okay.
north and south.
All right, I was not clear on that. I guess my other question on that, though, is why was there, sort of following up on Commissioner Fox's question about dwelling units and office square footage, if the interlocal agreement says school or animal shelter, why is that in the zoning at all? I'm just a little bit, whether it was a school or not, what does it have to do with dwelling units?
Yeah, so the interlocal agreement speaks to uses that would be allowed on the property that has exclusive use by Wake County and the property that would have exclusive use by the city of Raleigh. The original request, as submitted, would have rezoned the entire site, all 110 acres of it, to industrial mixed use. And so those zoning conditions were added, and we did a lot of discussion internally and with Zach to bring the requests down to remove the TIA requirement, since there would have been a variety of improvements recommended by a TIA for the entire site that were unlikely to have been built, since only a small area of the property would have been developed for an animal center use. I can, if you have questions.
I mean, if I'm the only one that has any concern, I'm still confused, but I love the animal shelter. I mean, we need it, and I know it's just a graphic. This has nothing to do with the rezoning, but hopefully the county's going to plant something along that trail, because I wouldn't walk my dog on that trail in the middle of summer, but I know it's just graphic representation. But.
Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what you said, Commissioner O'Haver. It feels as if the conditions as they're currently written are reflective of the larger parcel, and perhaps we could right-size those to the rezoning that's in front of us.
So the caps should be reflective of the 24-acre portion. It's just that industrial mixed-use 5 stories allows for pretty intensive development and a variety of uses as well.
Well, there's the height component.
Right, and the block perimeter.
And I also wanted to be clear, in the table that outlines the square footage of potential retail office number of units, am I understanding correctly that the condition is that those are or those and? Are those additive? So word or is used on one of the slides.
Yeah, so these different combinations of uses, what the condition is saying is that development would not exceed any of these or any of these individually.
Okay.
So 520 dwelling units, for example, or 190,000 square feet of office, et cetera.
Okay, but
So,
the
yeah,
intention is not to do any of those on this particular parcel.
That's correct.
Okay, so that was back to my comment of the right sizing the request to the parcel. Am I making sense? Apologies. Okay.
Yeah, I did one, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Omakaye.
That was my concern also. Like, it looked like we're asked to rezone a whole lot of land when the part that we're discussing is a smaller portion of it. So can we focus on rezoning that and leaving the rest of it as is, or have those be two separate rezoning cases and questions versus us saying yes to this shiny animal shelter while like letting something else come down the pipeline that we wouldn't want to see there?
Is that question for staff, the applicant? Can the rezoning be split? It sounds like you're saying just to cover the 24-acre piece.
Just to be clear, this rezoning would only rezone the 24-acre portion of the site.
Okay, so we're only talking about the piece that you're talking about.
The remaining part of the site, 80 or so acres, which are represented by the dotted line, would stay R4. Only the area closest to Auburn, Knightdale, and Battle Bridge would be rezoned to IX.
Okay, does that address everybody's question?
On that, so if we approve this, the only thing that could be built there would be the animal shelter. Would we have to ask them to put some prohibitions of anything else in the future that could be built there?
So the way that the conditions are worded right now, it is not limiting the use to just an animal shelter. My understanding is the interlocal agreement between the county and the city says that the county can use this site for any governmental purpose. So the county's intention is to do an animal shelter, but they wanted, my understanding of the condition with all the different development intensities is in the event that does not happen, they did want to give some limitation on the max build out of those. But they may be able to offer some clarification on whether or not they would be willing to limit the intensities or the uses even further. I think I understand your concerns of you're being presented with an animal shelter, but the conditions don't reflect that.
think a lot of those conditions were related to a TIA, but now that our transportation engineers worked with the city and NCDOT, a TIA is not required. So I'm happy to kind of work with staff on limiting those or reducing that or amending it in a way that focuses on the use at hand.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more question.
That's fine.
I want to, ask of the commission, I know that we have, we're hearing from people that are for or against this today.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll wait there. Never mind.
Okay. Are there other questions from commissioners? Then it sounds like we're going to leave this open to allow the applicant to revise conditions limiting use. Was there anything?
Height.
And height. Were there other items that we wanted them to consider? Commissioner Otwell.
I would just like to state that I trust the county to build a good facility, whether or not they decide to pursue an animal shelter. And if we meet the conditions for the height and the other restrictions, if they decide to put in a crisis center or whatever else the county likes to build, I don't think I would object to that. So I'm not very caught up on what the use is.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Otwell. When would you like to, I'm sorry. Yes, Matthew.
I heard some conflicting message there. Some folks were concerned about use, and Mr. Otwell was not. Is it specifically height? Can we just get specific feedback for the applicant and staff on what you were expecting?
Yeah, I can just speak
Commissioner
to.
Omakaye, wait a minute, she had her hand up
Sorry,
first.
how about
and
you
then-
point at me?
I was just making a point of usage. I trust the county also. My thing is making sure that we prohibit any use outside of the things we would feel like are of community serving or community facing or benefit. That's my concern about wanting, prohibitions put in, not saying it has to be an animal shelter or something of that nature, but it does raise concerns that there are some things that they're requesting that now they're saying they don't need, but we're asking to vote on those. So just wanting to make it more streamlined of what we're actually voting on.
Okay. Commissioner Walters.
I think I was just reflecting that at least what I'm hearing from the commission is that the zoning and the proposed zoning and conditions don't reflect the physical form of what we saw. And so I think just aligning those is helpful for us. But I generally agree with Commissioner Otwell.
So are we asking the applicant to consider revisions limiting use and height? It sounds like there is a general will of the commission for them to consider prohibitions on certain types of uses and limiting height. We need to give clear direction so they come back with what we want to see.
Yeah, and I would say, like, specifically what uses would that be?
I guess if we could, instead of maybe directing them to specific uses up at the table, I guess if we could just have clarification on whether or not you want to see solely an animal shelter, or are you willing to consider other uses as long as they serve a public purpose?
Commissioner Omakaye.
I think I actually said that specifically. Like, I'm okay. The prohibitions is not saying that we don't trust the county, but just that whatever is built there is for public use and public good versus anything else being able to be built there or that doesn't necessarily serve purpose, like a crisis shelter or an animal shelter, or even if it's a women's shelter, if it turns out to be a preschooler, you know what I'm saying, something like that, but something that is public service facing versus anything else.
Okay. Is that clear to the applicant?
We will definitely work with staff. Early on, I think we did limit, some of the neighbors were concerned that it was going to be a wastewater treatment plant or anything other, the heavy uses that were in the industrial use. So we'll revisit that list and kind of trim. We were looking at trimming some of those, kind of what they were considering more the scarier uses that they could be residing next to.
Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify my earlier comment. I I don't necessarily think that the uses need to be restricted.
Okay.
It was just what I was hearing was that was like a vestige, like a leftover from when the rezoning included the entire parcel. So I can imagine a scenario where all of those uses that are listed serve a public purpose. So
Okay.
I would trust that an interlocal agreement would cover any of those concerns that the city might have in terms of what the county put there. I just want to clarify that piece. The height component, when you kind of back away and squint at this one, it looks a lot like spot zoning. And the only mechanism I could kind of manipulate there was the height seemed very much out of place with future land use map and then also existing development pattern.
So we,
Yeah.
okay. When would you like to come back? Would you like to bring this back to the meeting on the 24th, in which case the revised conditions would be due this Friday, is that correct? Or the next meeting?
I mean, seeing how the staff can work quickly, CLH can work quickly. We want to keep this momentum moving.
Okay.
It's been a long time coming to here.
Okay.
So I'm ready to go.
So then we will,
I don't want to overcommit staff on that time, so I need to.
Staff is up to any option. Yeah, we would be happy to work with the county to get on-site revisions by this Friday.
Okay.
And try and get on March 24th.
great.
Just to be clear, the city is also an applicant on this request.
Thank you. So we will leave the hearing open. The applicant will come back at our March 24th meeting with revised conditions. The applicant has 2 minutes, 8 seconds remaining. And
Thank you very much for your time.
Of
We
course.
Look forward to seeing you on the 24th.
thank you. Thank you very much. I did not expect that one to take this long. So, Attorney, did we do everything we needed to do? Okay, great.
Yes, you're good. Thank you.
Our second new business item, rezoning Z3925, 319 Heck Street. We'll hear from staff.
Good morning, Commission. Mitra Cheshbaradaran, presenting on Z3925. This is a request to rezone just over half an acre at 319 Heck Street. Current zoning on the site is R10 with the New Bern Edenton NCOD, and the request is to rezone the site to RX4 with conditions, and then your deadline for action is May 9th. Zoning in the area is predominantly residential, with a few instances of lower intensity mixed-use districts like RX and NX. Here's a look at the site and where it sits and surrounding uses. The site is directly across from Oakwood Historic Cemetery, which is just north under the Environmental Parks and Open Space label. And then northeast of the site is St. Augustine's University. Outside of that, the area is predominantly residential, comprised of single-family detached homes, and then some smaller apartment buildings, townhouses as well. And then just south of the site, some institutional and office uses as you move closer to New Bern Avenue. Here's where the site sits in relation to the NCOD it's within. It's on the edge. And this NCOD sits between Oakwood Historic District west of the site, and then also some mapped TOD area, which corresponds to the New Bern future BRT route, which is just south. Look at the site today and surrounding development. Currently on the site is a smaller apartment building that was built roughly in the 70s and has 12 units. I'll note that today it is vacant and not in use. And there's also a surface parking lot on the site as well. A few looks at the site and its frontage. The first is moving east kind of like away from downtown. You can start to see the small apartment building that exists today, limited pedestrian facilities on this portion of Oakwood, and then also some limited bicycle facilities as well. And then the second image kind of shows you a bit more of that small apartment building and its intersection with Heck Street. The applicant has proposed 3 conditions currently. The first is prohibiting the cemetery use. The second speaks to frontage. I'll just go ahead and note that the language here mimics the urban limited frontage and requires that 50% of the property frontage for Oakwood Avenue will have front principal building facades within 20 feet of public right-of-way, and then that same kind of idea for 25% of property frontage along other public rights-of-way. And then the third condition prohibits vape and tobacco shops as a sole use or a sole like shop. The UDO doesn't include vape and tobacco use as a specific use, so it can't be prohibited outright. Other retailers could sell these goods. It just couldn't be the sole revenue for a shop or a retail space. Here's a look at the difference between entitlement between existing and proposed zoning, an estimated 10 units under existing zoning, and then up to 52 under proposed. And then the difference in setbacks as well. Generally, reductions in setback requirements moving into RX. The NCOD does have some additional setback requirements or different setback requirements in the base R10 zoning district. That comes into play for the front. There's a minimum of 10 and a max of 25 feet for front yard setback. And then for side lot lines, a minimum of 0 feet setback when a building is 10 feet from another building. I'll also note that the NCD has some height limits as well to 35 feet. And then here's another look. This is just to show the commercial entitlement that can come from the request. In RX, commercial uses are limited, but this site would be eligible for that. It's located at the corner of 2 public streets, so 4,000 square feet could be incorporated as a ground floor use in an apartment building. Overall, the site is in an area that is more walkable and bikeable and better served by transit than other areas in the city. Residents in this area experience lower transportation costs and have high proximity to jobs. The site's just outside of downtown Raleigh and about a mile east of the Person Street area. The site is served by several Go Raleigh bus routes, all within walking distance of the site, and then also is within the future BRT transit area for New Bern Avenue. The request does not include any subsidized units, but it does add to the overall housing supply, would permit a variety of housing types in smaller units, on smaller lots, and it's in an area well served by transit. Generally, residents in this area are less likely to be people of color and less likely to be low income, and then rents in this area have increased greater than the citywide average. Overall, the request is consistent with the future land use map designation of moderate scale residential. This is supported because of the site's proximity and location within a BRT transit area. The request is also consistent with the urban format. It's within a frequent transit area, and again, within a BRT transit area and just outside of a transit station planned buffer area. These would generally recommend an urban frontage be included. As I mentioned before, that's not included with the request specifically, but the second condition does mimic what an urban frontage or urban limited frontage would do. The request is also consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. A variety of consistent policies here that speak to compact development, capitalizing on transit access, increasing housing variety and opportunity near future BRT areas, and kind of growing around transit. And then that's that area plan there. 2 inconsistent policies were identified, and these both speak to fire response time service standards. No outstanding issues for the case, and then your deadline for action is May 9th. The applicant is also here.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing. The applicant and those in support have 10 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Bennett and Commissioners. Just for the record, again, Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of the applicant, 319 Heck Street LLC, but we do have Stuart Cullinan here with us today in case there are any questions for the applicant directly. I will actually skip over several slides that Ms. Seshbaradan covered very well. That's our vacant site today, built in 1973. I'll pause here. You did already see that this site exists on the very eastern edge of this NCOD. You did hear that the building was constructed in the early 70s. That was 1973. The NCOD came in 1992. So this nearly 20-year-old building in the configuration that it's in today with the surface parking lot was in existence at that time and always non-compliant with that NCOD. I will jump forward here to look at some of that surrounding zoning. This version of the map doesn't have those overlays on it, but just to highlight that moving east from the site, you do encounter that mixed-use zoning on the south side of Oakwood Avenue, being the three-story designation and then the seven-story designation on the north side there at St. Augustine's. But bringing in the TOD and, of course, also being within the frequent transit area, those properties to the east with the three-story zoning can actually develop with greater height using the height bonus that's available under both of those designations. These are the requirements of the New Bern-Edenton NCOD. And I'll note that minimum lot size in particular, 4,000 square feet, that is a typical R10 lot size average. And so that is a size that permits, sort of a large single-family house in a very urban context, but still a large single-family house would not be out of place on a lot like that one. I will also just note that looking back at Oakwood Avenue is something different. Between the TOD to the east and the historic overlay district farther to the west, there are 3 full blocks and most of a 4th block that are in this NCOD. Within the NCOD and fronting on Oakwood Avenue, there are 18 parcels, 19 if you include this one. Of those 18 other parcels, 8 of them comply with that minimum lot size of the NCOD. So that NCOD never really described the character of the Oakwood Avenue frontage of this district. Finally. So looking at that urban form map, which you already saw, I won't go into depth on that, but I will note that this is one of the ways that a site can get a height bonus. As you saw to the east, there is also the TOD, which has its own height bonus. In this case, if we were requesting 3-story zoning, there would be a height bonus available. As we're requesting 4-story zoning, that height bonus is not available. So it actually has a lower cap than the 3-story zoning to the east, given the height bonus that's available there. I do want to give a little bit more background on what happened with this particular request, as it was originally filed as an RX3, 3-story zoning request. We held our neighborhood meetings under that request, but what has happened since then, 2 things happened since then to change the request to RX4. One being that there was actually a fire in the existing apartment building. So at our very first neighborhood meeting, we were presenting an idea that building would be renovated and then some townhomes added for the remainder of the site. With the fire in the building, it is no longer commercially reasonable to renovate that building. So the idea is that that would not happen. We also heard at our first neighborhood meeting some concerns about parking if that surface parking lot were to be redeveloped. So where would those cars go? And so the idea was that, with the building coming down and with 4-story zoning, not only would it reduce our maximum height possible with the bonus, but it would permit an additional story to have parking underneath and resolve those neighbor concerns. So with those changes, we actually, like I said, that kind of came in after our second neighborhood meeting. So we went ahead and just held a third voluntary neighborhood meeting to make sure that this was clear and that no one felt like the game had changed since the neighborhood meeting. So that meeting was held last week. We had 2 attendees who expressed no concerns, but this idea was shared through the normal notice process in the letter as well as at that meeting. With that, I just wanted to highlight some of the surrounding zoning. You see the site here at the bottom. in this area. And looking down Oakwood Avenue, we have some newer housing over here. These are some of those non-conforming lots that I mentioned. Those couldn't be built under the NCOD other than having a non-conforming lot today. We've got some apartment types over here, new townhomes in this area. Lots going, oh no, I'm not able to erase again. Not sure what happened to that function.
In the upper right.
Upper right corner. Upper right. No, well, there we go, thank you. We hand erase. Oh dear. Is there another way to do this?
The clear next to the
Oh, thank you. Excellent, okay. To back up the view a little bit, now the site is over here on the right side. I've lost my tool again. So we have that. We also have an existing commercial node here at Tarboro, and some different building types. We have the Tarboro Community Center, soon to be redeveloped, and we start to see a more commercial character as well there. And then now looking to the northeast, now you see St. Augustine's and the different building types in that area as well. So it's a very mixed, diverse neighborhood with lots of building types. Obviously, Oakwood Avenue being something a little bit special and different compared to the bulk of the neighborhood. For that reason, we feel that this request for RX4 zoning would help to reduce the height cap that exists to the east, start to step down toward the NCOD itself, and really start to rehabilitate a site that was never a comfortable fit within that NCOD and sort of got reached out and grabbed. Since that building was built 53 years ago, in order to provide increased housing in this area, within the frequent transit area, within this dynamic and architecturally diverse corridor, we feel this request is reasonable and in the public interest, and request your support and are excited to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to speak in support of this item? Okay, then we're reserving 3 minutes and 5 seconds. The opposition now has 10 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie Long. I'm new to this process, so you'll have to steer me along here with anything I can do to help. I am within 500 feet of the proposed site. I'm 4 houses down. I'm going on 7 years of living in that wonderful neighborhood. I'm here on behalf of myself, my 6-year-old daughter who I'm raising there, neighbors who may share my sentiment, and perhaps those who are maybe too busy to even know that this change is here and just have the presumption that where they live will continue to be residential first and foremost. I just want to make it clear I support the LLC at 319 Hex Street. Theirs and the related LLCs have done a lot of really great development in our block and surrounding. So I don't have a concern with the developer as an entity. I don't have a concern with a 3 or maybe even 4-story building going there to house more residential units. But I don't support the inclusion of the retail on the ground floor. And honestly, until the helpful opener to begin with, I did not realize that it would be up to 52 units as opposed to like 10. The values that I come here with are community. I care about neighbors, volunteering at the school, being part of garden club and raising money for grant programs to support organizations, safety, and home as a respite. So that's the perspective I bring here. I don't oppose change. It is hard. But as an example, on the backside of our block, you were seeing a lot of pictures of grass on the backside, but that is the Cottages of Idlewild under construction, 18 new affordable homes going there. Used to be grass, used to be beautiful trees, now clear cut. So there's a lot of balance, a lot of give and take we're already doing as homeowners there. But however perfectly executed the build out is, the very nature of a business takes customers, and that means traffic, and that means noise, none of which they or we will have control once it's in place. I think about all that we've done to work hard. There's a beautiful serene cemetery across the street from us. We've worked so hard to keep the serenity and safety. Actually, I think back to the day the fire was mentioned on that site. I was one of the people that called in a suspicious person that that was approaching that lot right before it happened. So I am a very vocal supporter of community and want to see it succeed. It seems like I'm just saying no. Again, it's just to the retail portion. And I do believe that retail is important for the area, but the spot that was highlighted at Oakwood and Tarboro that has a stretch of retail there really is a wonderful spot for that to take place. So I appreciate everybody listening to my perspective as someone who lives there, supports it, and wants to see it thrive, and the LLC thriving in its build, just maybe under slightly different conditions at that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Are there others who wish to speak in support?
Hi, my name is Octavia Rainey, and I'm here to say that I have lived in College Park for 70 years, and I have some objections. Number one, the young lady who presented, she forgot to call it Idlewild. It's very important that you call that neighborhood Idlewild. It was formed in 1891. And I have big objection to that because when you don't call Idlewild's name, you don't know where you're at or what you're talking about. And Idlewild is a Black neighborhood, and I resent that. I resent, number two, you keep talking about facing Oakwood. You know what, Oakwood is just a street name. That's all it is. But that's Idlewild. It was founded in 1891. Number two, I take exception to you talking about the transit. The only bus that come close to Idlewild is number 10. The other ones don't count. So that's incorrect to me. It don't count. It's just number 10. Number three, I have huge objections to changing the NCDOT. I do. This is not the first rodeo about that NCDOT by Stewart. He did that on Newbern Avenue. And I just don't understand it. Why are we back here at this today? I don't understand that. Last but not least, I don't think you need retail right there at that spot. You have retail on Tarboro Road, which is located in Idlewild. To the Planning Commission, I am sick and tired when these plans comes up to y'all in the Black community, you don't call them by name. There's something wrong with that picture because when you call it by name, you get a different perspective. But when you just say Oakwood, what does that really mean? I don't know. Do we need to change the street name to a Black name to begin to put the focus of where it should be? Something is wrong with this picture. I came this morning to voice my opinion. Now, I don't live within that 500 block, so I didn't get to notice. But if I had lived within that block, within that area, I would have been there front and center. And I would have brought other neighbors to that meeting. So I'm really confused at where y'all are going, what y'all are doing. But I tell you one thing, when you don't call the name of a neighborhood, people don't come out because they don't know what you are talking about. And to the young lady who spoke before me, I think more people would have came out if they had known, because I would have came out and brought 25 others with me to give input on this process. This meeting needs to be redone so we can have the opportunity to give our opinions. But changing the NCDOT, absolutely not. We've been through this before. We have. And I don't understand it. I'm really lost. Number two, it is not on a transit route. The only thing that ran there is number 10. So that other stuff, you can just take that out. Just take it out. Take it out now. But I am concerned again when you don't call the Black neighborhood by their founding name, 1891 Idlewild. It's ridiculous to me. And I'm sick of this. I'm just sick of it. Because I think when you do that, you downplay the Black community. You act like it don't exist, and then you erase it. And y'all are part of that. And you shouldn't be a part of that. Anything you do should be about enhancing, not erasing. There's something wrong with this today. And I'm asking that we have another meeting. And this time, I'm coming because I have concerns. Idlewild and College Park have always been very, very close neighborhoods. And I have always spoke up for Idlewild and College Park since 1973. So I'm not new at this game. I'm an old clown. I am old. But I just think that as I get older and older in my age, because I'm 70 years old, I'm sick of this. And if we don't claim our neighborhoods, if we don't protect our neighborhoods, they're going to be gone in less than 20 years from now. They're going to be gone. They're going to vanish. And you won't even recognize it's Idlewild anymore. So I'm just saying, from my perspective, I would like to have another community meeting to have the opportunity to invite people out to hear Stewart's presentation, because it won't fair. If only 2 people showed up, what kind of input is that? It's no input. And I take exception. I'm just sorry, but this is how I feel. I'm 70 years old. That's how I feel. That's what I stand for. I'm 70, and I've been in this neighborhood fighting since 1973.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to this item? Okay, then we have 1 minute, 14 seconds remaining on the clock for the opposition. I'm going to bring it back to the table for commissioner questions. These are questions for staff, the applicant, or the 2 members of the public who have spoken. Any questions? Commissioner Omakaye.
I'm wondering if I do also agree that I think that mixed use there is concerning to me. Retail use in this residential area is concerning to me. There is space for that. And it does shift the landscape and the character of the neighborhood, especially around around Idlewild and the Oakwood Cemetery. And I'm wondering if the applicant can they explain, and only when there's not even a prohibition of vape shops or anything, it just can't be the sole use of the space. I'm wondering if the applicant is willing for this to be a residential space instead of a space that's residential and retail, if that is what the community's concern is, 1, and 2, would the applicant be willing to have another community meeting?
The applicant like to answer those questions. Again, this doesn't count against the time.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments, Commissioner Omakaye. So there's been a diversity of opinions about the retail. There is immediately to the east, there's zoning, the same zoning, the RX, that would permit that as well, going all the way down Oakwood Avenue. So we've heard some interest in having it. We've also heard opposition. It's not crucial to the site. So it's something that certainly, if it's the will of the commission, we could look at removing that use. It was thought that it would perhaps be a benefit. I think, as all of you know, in the RX district, it's a very limited amount of retail, which is designed to keep the residential character of the neighborhood and not to sort of attract people from far and wide to the area. So thinking that that is what the district was designed to do, thought it could be more of a benefit to residents than sort of a detriment to them. That said, I'm not aware of any location in the city that has RX zoning and has a commercial use. They tend not to drive the kind of support that the retail needs. So given the unlikelihood of it anyway, it's something that we're certainly open to re-examining, but really weren't sure coming in here how that would be received, or if it might be considered a benefit that it would be an option.
I mean, to me, it just seems like for the character of the neighborhood and those that live in the community, retail use might not be the best thing that makes them feel most comfortable, and nor does it, to me, fit the face of the neighborhood. And if it's not that big of a deal, and it's if the commission is cool with that, especially since they're adding housing supply, I think that would be something I would like to see you all consider.
You had a second question?
Would you also be willing? You all also be willing to host more community engagement meetings so you can get more engagement from community and their perspective, since it wasn't a large turnout at your
I'll have to ask the applicant about that. We did hold the third voluntary meeting. We can talk about that, and I could perhaps come back on that one. I would say most likely, obviously, we're all here at the table now and listening, so that's something that we can react to here in real time. But like I said, we'll talk about that one. In any event, yeah, and I did want to make one clarification on that tobacco vape use that was mentioned. It wasn't prohibited only as a sole use; it was prohibited as a principal business that a retail would be in. So if it's, their principal business, even if they may have other things, that would also be prohibited. So it's not that they're only a vape and tobacco shop necessarily.
Thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Walters.
So I'm thinking about the type of retail that might go in a space like this. It's a pretty small site. Your average coffee shop is like 1,500 square foot to 3,000 square foot footprint. What kind of scale of retail are you thinking about? I'm just thinking about small scale retail. It makes me think of places like Brookside or, small commercial destinations, or the one right down the street here that are almost amenity for the neighborhood, creates a more walkable condition, adds active nodes to the neighborhood and provides a resource. So, there are different types of retail and scales of retail, and I'm just trying to kind of narrow in to help my imagination of what might be here, because, I'm thinking coffee shop, corner store, those might be great for the local neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I would say by comparison with Brookside, anything here would be much smaller, than a Brookside type situation. But yeah, the RX district, residential mixed use, right there in its name, right? It is a residential character district designed to only have those kind of supportive commercial uses and not be a destination. So yes, it is absolutely designed for residents, and it really couldn't be more than that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burnett. Sorry.
Hi, Molly. My question is taking into consideration the young lady who came up in opposition with the 6-year-old daughter regarding traffic, regarding just general, I guess, just a spike in just activity in the area. Would the applicant consider some type of, I don't know what we can ask of the applicant, but to mitigate the speed and so on and so forth. Maybe that's even not of the applicant, but my concern is speed, people driving through super fast. I already know people drive really fast down Oakwood anyway. But something along those lines, just to mitigate speed, whether temporary speed bumps. Is there anything like the applicant could bring to the table on that?
Great question. So I know that the city has undertaken extensive efforts to slow Oakwood Avenue, and it is actually much slower than it was even recently today. So that has happened. I don't know that this site can overall control the speed of Oakwood Avenue, but as far as an increase in people, we think this is a site, being here in the frequent transit area, very close to the actual station area, even where we don't know of a place that would make more sense to bring the people and to do it with less traffic. Right. This is one of the few locations in the city where one can expand that density and to provide options other than a car for those people to get around. So we think this is one of the locations that would actually reduce that. And even, for example, if you push housing further down Oakwood Avenue, now they're even more likely to drive down Oakwood Avenue. Right. So I think just keeping it as close as we can keep people to activity centers will reduce that kind of traffic concern.
Other questions? Commissioner O'Haver.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I have questions for staff initially, but Ms. Stewart, I'll have some questions for you as well. Okay. Before my question, though, I would just like to make a general comment to thank staff for all the hard work that they put into these cases. And it's a lot of information. There's sometimes it gets emotional, but staff is working to do their best to bring the information forward. So I just want to thank them before I ask my question. What is the difference between the height limitations in R10 to RX4?
In R10 would allow up to 3 stories normally as a base district with height up to, I believe it's 45 feet, but I was pulling up the UDO. But because it's within the NCOD, that is capped to 35 feet. And then under RX, it would go up to 4 stories, which I believe is 68 feet.
And then you said this would be considered moderate scale versus medium scale. Is that what you had mentioned? So it's currently medium scale residential?
It's currently moderate scale.
Okay.
So moderate is less intense in our comprehensive plan than medium.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions for the applicant. I think I live in this neighborhood. I think retail can be great. I do know in some other cases, I appreciate the limitation to vape shop, et cetera, but I know in other cases, we've asked the applicant if they'd be willing to consider other types of uses, check cashing, et cetera. So I would like to see if the applicant, one, would be willing to at least just considering expanding that, since there's some concern about the type of retail for the neighborhood. We've done that before. My second question is, would the applicant, and I think Ms. Stewart will not be surprised at this, I'm fairly consistent on it, there are existing residences adjacent to the site. They've been there for a while. I think asking for a 4-story building, I think, yeah, sometimes single-family homes can be equal to 3. I'm okay with 4 stories, but I wouldn't be okay with a 4-story unit 0 feet next to my single-family residence. So I'd like to ask the applicant if there's some consideration to find a balance between what the current zoning requires versus what the proposed zoning allows. And I will just say, if there's not, other than that, I'm fully in support of this rezoning. But if there's not an ability to consider something in between that to at least consider the adjacent residential homeowners, I probably won't be able to support this particular case, even though I'm in favor of the project.
Thank you for that. So to start with your first question about expanding the types of retail uses that might be prohibited, certainly a conversation that we can have. We addressed the one that we heard that was a particular concern. Are there others in particular? I think you mentioned one. Sorry.
I mean, I'd put the onus on you. You're a good attorney. There's been many rezoning cases that we've passed where we've approved additional restrictions. The one that comes to mind is check cashing. I don't remember what the other ones are, but I do know that we've had conversations around that, and I do think expanding that list somewhat could be beneficial.
Okay, and we will work with staff on that. As I think you know that once you get sort of below the level of a listed use in the code to things that are types of retail, for example, it gets tricky from their enforcement perspective, and that's why the tobacco language reads exactly as it does. That was a suggestion. So we will work with them on sort of what's possible here. I think that's not an issue. I will note that under the current zoning, the side setbacks are 0 feet. However,
So I'm going to need staff to confirm that. It says side lot line is 5 feet in our material. So is it 0 feet?
The NCOD has a requirement for it. So yeah, we can certainly ask them. But in either case, I can say that the RX4 zoning would bring in the Zone A of the neighborhood transition when you're next to an R district. What that would require is, at minimum, a 10-foot buffer that, if you do the 10-foot version, has a wall and is very heavily landscaped. So it's a very intensive transition between those uses. And there are other options that are wider, for example.
That's A10, the A10 buffer.
It's not called that in the neighborhood transitions. It's the Zone A, and so it's got 3 options under it. Yeah.
Again, I'll sort of leave that up to y'all. We can talk about it offline too, so you don't show up and be surprised by my comments. But I don't know that the A10 buffer would necessarily be appropriate here either. I just think there's a way to fit it in there into the character and the scale of the neighborhood. Again, I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of the retail. I just, a big wall and a bunch of heavy landscaping between me and my neighbor is not very neighborly. Again, I live in the neighborhood. So this is just me personally. I don't hear any of the other commissioners sort of following up on me. So, again, this is just my view of this particular
Fair
case.
enough. And that's just the way the UDO works. That's not specific to this rezoning. And not something that we could take away through this process. That is what the city has decided is appropriate between those two districts.
I have a question. Then for Ms. Rainey and Ms. Long, your opposition, or at least part of your opposition, was about the mixed use. And we're talking about asking the applicant about limiting uses. Are you okay with certain uses, like a coffee shop, or are you opposed to all mixed use? Do you just want it to be solely residential? I want to make sure we're addressing your concern and the applicant doesn't come back with something revised that you still don't like. We can hear from both of you, please.
I am opposed to residential, period.
To residential?
I am opposed to the retail. I am opposed to the retail altogether. And I want to say, at the DMV, I thought they was planning on putting a grocery store at the DMV on Newbern Avenue. That's what I thought. So, second, you have a retail on Tarboro Road. So why? I don't understand the change. I just don't understand the change. And that retail use have no business in the residential area, none whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, if I am correct on this, at the corner of Idlewild and Edenton, that is a retail use. So I don't understand how we get over here to Heck Street and a retail use when you have a vacant parcel of land at the corner of Idlewild and Edenton right there. That is a retail use. That's what it used to be. So I really don't understand it. So we don't know what that use is going to be, but that was a retail use. At the corner of East Lane Street and Idlewild, right at the corner where the mini park is, that was a retail use because a store was there. And before the store, it was a flower shop. So I don't support this on Heck Street at all. I'm not in support of it. I think it just need to be residential. That's what I support.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey.
Similar sentiment from me. I think it's, you don't know until something comes there, all the things you should have thought of, and then it will have been a foregone conclusion at that point. So certainly a no to retail would be the safest and purely in support of residential. Also from the perspective of traffic calming, that was probably my first foray into anything related to civic involvement is when the city's neighborhood traffic management program started their design phases. I was involved in that from 2021 to 2023, reviewing. So on Oakwood, starting at the west side at Linden, which is where the cemetery is, going all the way eastbound down Oakwood, past this property in question, all the way to Raleigh Boulevard. All of the traffic circles or roundabouts there, the speed humps, the speed bumps, all of those were something that I talked to people about and looked to get support for. So I do think we're doing best as we can already with what the city already implemented. It has slowed things down. People blow the stop sign at Heck already still. But overall, I think we've done as best as we can. I'd hate to take that step back and try to bring more people there. I think it's also important, there is a bike lane there, but there are no sidewalks. So if we're imagining people are going to walk, they're going to be walking at risk. And if we're bringing anybody that's going to be driving, it's putting people who are already trying to walk there at risk.
Thank you. Commissioner Omakaye.
I just wanted to reiterate to the point of...
We're still asking questions. So you have a question or a comment? Comments are later.
I'll wait.
Okay. I'll make sure you get it in, but we just...
Hi, just wanted to offer a point of clarification, just in terms of commercial entitlement and RX. Just want to reiterate, it is only permitted 4,000 square feet as a ground floor use in apartment building types. So that's the first thing. And then in terms of some of the uses that you had mentioned, those are already restricted in an RX district, specifically vehicle-related things, vehicle fuel sales, check cashing, and payday loans. And there's also some limits on hours of operation for retail or commercial in RX.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And then one last note for setback requirements. What's in the staff report is just reflects what like the base R10 zoning district is. So my apologies for that, but the slide had the correct setback requirements, which I can pull back up.
You're good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Other questions? And we have 3 more items, just so you know, so I don't want to rush through anything, but it already looks like we're going to continue this if the applicant is considering revising conditions. So if we can let them know anything else we want them to consider, so we can move on to our next item. Are there any other questions? Okay. Then, Ms. Stewart, would you like to continue this to our March 24th meeting? In which case, revised conditions would be due by this Friday.
Yes, we can absolutely do it by this Friday because we are going to prohibit retail.
Oh, well, okay. All righty then. So we will continue case Z 3925 until our March 24th meeting. Yes, Commissioner Omakaye. I'm sorry, I said I was going to let you provide your comment. I apologize.
No problem. I want to make a very quick comment, just clarifying something that Ms. Octavia Rainey was saying, that we kind of glazed over when she talked about the Idlewild District and Idlewild Village and the importance of saying the name of the community. We've seen a lot of different changes that has erased history of Black and brown people in the city of Raleigh, and sometimes that comes with rezoning and replanning and not preserving neighborhoods. And Oakwood is a community that is strongly preserved, it is historic, and even right now while we're debating this, it's on the edge of Oakwood, and we work hard to protect that. I think what Ms. Rainey is trying to say is that, what Ms. Rainey is saying is that it's important for all people across the city who grow up in a certain area that understand those areas by a certain name, can understand what's going on in those areas, especially if they live close to them, and making sure that we're culturally sensitive, which is important, in planning and any other measures that we're taking in this city to call this area by its name. And even if we just need a moment of historical context before we jump into whatever decisions we're making, can also add to the informative nature of our decisions. So what she's saying is making sure that residents understand if something is going on Oakwood and Heck, they may not instantly understand that this is the Idlewild neighborhood they grew up in, and these are more changes happening. Same as we closed South Street for the Red Hat, which also is a historic area for Black people in this city. It seems like the areas that we're choosing to target to make major difference and changes in is changing the face and landscape culturally of this neighborhood and this city, and that is important. And I think I just wanted to clarify and make sure that everybody understood what she was saying and how important that point that she was making is.
Thank you, Commissioner Omakaye. Our next new business item is Z4325, 6309 Litchford Road. We'll hear from staff.
Good morning, Hiram Marziano, Planning and Development. This is rezoning Z4325, located 6309 Litchford Road, just north of the southern intersection of Johnsdale Road and Litchford Road's loop intersection. It connects at two places. Just want to make it clear we're at the southern side of that intersection. This is a request to rezone 3.79 acres from R4 to R10 CU. Deadline for action will be May 9th. Zoning in this area is predominantly residential. However, there is some commercial and industrial located south and eastward of this site. As you can see from this kind of zoomed out, we are pretty much adjacent to Millbrook High School to the west, some industrial sectors further east, some newer commercial and moderate scale residential south and east of here, and then some older moderate scale, and then the surrounding area here is low scale residential. Millbrook Exchange Park is also right there. Just a closer zoom up the site, you can see it's got an older structure on the property. Here's that structure. Number one would be from Litchford Road. Number two would be the appearance from Johnsdale Road. I will note that I didn't take better angles of this, but you can see that there's no improvements along the street network on either road. The applicant has proposed several conditions in your packet. You have one version from the draft conditions. After some staff comments, they amended the last one, but to run through those real quick, they're recommending to prohibit the boarding house as a use, the apartment building type, which is allowed in the R10 district, some photographic documentation similar to what we've done in the past with a few other places for the structure on site. It does qualify to be, I think, at least looked at nationally, and limits the principal dwelling units to 54 on the site. The fifth condition was about erosion control measures, and with stormwater staff comments, they've changed it from double silt to a product called super silt. So that's the difference from what's in your packet to what's been signed. As you can see, current zoning would allow for 32 units. Proposed zoning, they've, through conditions, have restricted to 54. I've used townhouse as a comparable example between the two districts for your setbacks. This area, regardless, I pointed out the infrastructure before because this does have a higher walk score based on the utility we use. Again, there is no improvements on the road for sidewalks. It has an average transit score for this area, an average bike score, good transportation costs, and it is located approximately pretty well to some jobs. Triangle Town Link, Route 25 here is the closest route that serves this area. It's approximately a quarter-mile south. However, again, it's not really considered to be walkable within walking distance of transit without those utilities, infrastructure in place. So we consider that to be kind of average walking distance for transit. Does not include subsidized units, does add to the housing supply, permits a variety of housing types. Smaller units are allowed and smaller lot sizes than the city's average. Only significant demographic as related to the averages of the city would be that as we've seen plenty of times, the cost of living or cost of rent has increased considerably. It is not consistent with the future land use map. The area is low-scale residential. You'll note that the public facilities there to the west, that's the school property. There is moderate scale across the street, some public parks and open space, and some community mixed use in the area. But R10, strictly speaking, without any enhancements of like frequent transit or something like that, isn't generally consistent with low-scale residential. There's no urban form designation for this site, and being residential, one wouldn't be applied to it regardless. So overall, we do believe it is consistent with the comprehensive plan's visions, goals, policies. However, inconsistent with the future land use map. Some of those policies speak to housing, missing middle housing, reinforcing urban pattern, zoning infrastructure impacts, the infrastructure for water sewers available, housing variety, zoning for housing. So it's a lot of housing compatibility. And again, inconsistent would be strict definition of the future land use map. Your upcoming meetings, 24th, April 14th, and April 28th. Deadline for action would be May 9th. If this is approved, ultimately a flume amendment would be necessary to take it from low-scale residential to moderate-scale residential.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing. The applicant and those in support have 10 minutes.
Hey, good morning. Chair Bennett, members of the Planning Commission, Toby Coleman with Smith Anderson, here on behalf of the property owner, Litchford Point LLC. With me today is a member of the ownership group, Blair Tharrington, as well as Jason Meadows, who's been sort of serving as an engineering consultant on this project. So, this is a fairly unique site. It's about 3.8 acres, located on Litchford Road, which is a 4-lane road, and has, good walkability to Millbrook High, Millbrook Exchange. And this rezoning is really to take a look at, what could be built here. Could it be denser in sort of a neighborhood-friendly way? You've got some apartments. You got about 240 apartments across the street, and then just to the south, just south of Johnsdale, there's about 82 apartments. I will also note, we do have a number of neighbors here. I just, from the neighborhood meetings, I've seen them here this morning. And they raised a number of concerns that we've been trying to work through. The biggest one we heard sort of at the outset was, are you going to build apartments here? We have put in a condition that says no apartment building type. And a lot of the concerns, the neighbors had a number of concerns related to that. But part of it was just that they'd had a number of problems with some of the apartments, other apartment projects, and then concerns, which I'll talk a little bit more about, around traffic on Johnsdale Road, which is this street right here. It's the sort of a residential street. This neighborhood was built before, just as background, this neighborhood that surrounds the site was built in the 60s before this part of the city was part of the city. And so it was all built to county standards. And so part of the underlying issue here is we've got an old Wake County development with sort of a narrower street, culverts, no sidewalks, and so there's sort of various issues going on with the traffic. I always forget how to do that. Let's see. There we go. Anyway, one of the other concerns we heard was about density, and a concern particularly that if we're doing R10, it's currently zoned R4. They're concerned about just sort of being overwhelmed by the project. To try to address that concern, we went to the city and basically said, can you run your computer calculation on what would be the number of units that you could develop under R6? This is what the city popped out, and as you can see, the max number of residential units that the city calculated under R6 zoning was 54. That's how we came up with our zoning condition that limits the number of units at the site to 54. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're proposing R10 zoning to provide some flexibility in terms of basically how you arrange the homes. But we wanted as much as possible, recognizing the FLUM designation of low density residential, which recommends R2, R4, or R6. We wanted to make the R10 zoning as consistent with R6 as possible. And so we have put no apartments and then this limit on the number of units, which is effectively a density limit. We've taken a look at, took a look at some of the other, we wanted to just make sure, and we did talk with the neighbors about this. We took a look at sort of basically, are there other differences in R6 and R10 that we could address? And generally, they're about the same. There's some minor differences when you dig really way down deep, but generally, it's the same minimum lot width if you're talking about townhomes, which is really where you would get the density. Same street and rear setbacks, same minimum building separation, same building height. And so, while we're happy to consider other things, just wanted to give you guys a sense on sort of what we've been thinking through in R6 versus R10. One of the big issues that is harder for us to address and that we have not addressed in our conditions yet is concerns, the neighborhood's very reasonable concerns about traffic. So there is an existing traffic problem on Johnsdale Road, and I'm sure you're going to hear from the neighbors if you haven't already heard in some written communications. As I understand it, or I understand a little bit. I've been out there, but I haven't lived there. As I understand from the people that live there, a big issue is that Millbrook High uses Johnsdale Road as one of its access points. it's so bad, and we heard so many complaints that we actually reached out to Wake County Public Schools and the principal of Millbrook and said, this is a real problem for this neighborhood. We're hearing concerns about safety. We're hearing concerns about, having to wait too long to get out. Is there anything that can be done? And the answer was respectfully no. They basically said, no, we need this entrance. Otherwise, it gums up our other entrances. So, sorry. It's frustrating. Again, I'll let the residents speak for themselves, but when we mentioned this at the second neighborhood meeting, the neighbors did not seem particularly surprised by that response. I think they've been dealing with those sort of issues. The solution that the neighbors asked us to consider related to traffic, their big concern is either cut through traffic, as they've expressed it, having a road that cuts through that would create even more issues. In particular, they're concerned about cars going onto Johnsdale, and asked us to consider a zoning condition that would prohibit vehicular traffic onto Johnsdale except for emergency vehicles. We have not offered that yet, and we're not in a position to offer that, at least today. We have reached out to the Department of Transportation to get an understanding on whether this site would get access to Litchford, given that it also has access onto Johnsdale. We haven't gotten an answer yet. And then obviously we also need to talk with city transportation about it. So we didn't want to offer that zoning condition absent having that additional information. So I say that all because if you guys decide that you'd like to see some changes, we would like to make sure that if we get asked to come back, that we have sufficient time to have those conversations and close that loop. I will note, though, that this is just the transportation estimate that was in our report, and as you can see, the increased trips from a maximum of 54 units is estimated to be. It will generate some traffic, but it's not significant traffic. It's about 15 cars in the AM peak hour, so. Was that one every 4 minutes, and then 22 cars in the PM peak hour, which probably doesn't match up with the school peak hour. So it would, the neighbors are very, very concerned about it. I'm not in any way trying to minimize that, but just wanted to present y'all with some of the additional information. And with that, we're available for questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in support of this item? Okay, we'll reserve 2 minutes, 13 seconds for the applicant and those in support. Next, we'll hear from the opposition, and you have a total of 10 minutes. Please state your name for the record. You don't have to give your address unless you just want to.
Good morning. My name's Philip Brown. I'm a fifth, sixth generation Raleigh resident. My family's lived in Litchford Forest going on 4 generations with my children. We grew up with the Batchford family who originally developed our neighborhood. The Johnson family had a wonderful home site with 4 acres, just shy of 4 acres. We hope to keep that into an R4 zoning based on the conditions that I'll go through today. When Raleigh evaluates rezonings, the city considers 4 findings of facts. Consistency with the comprehensive plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, infrastructure and public service capacity, and environmental and community impacts. These criteria with this proposal raise serious concerns for our neighborhood. First is compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. Litchford Forest has been a low-density, single-family neighborhood since the early 1960s. The average lot size is under 3/4 of an acre. Allowing 54 dwelling units on 3.8 acres represents a level of density that is dramatically inconsistent with the homes surrounding it. Responsible planning normally includes gradual transitions between housing densities. This proposal skips that transition entirely and instead places high-density housing directly next to large-lot single-family homes. Second is infrastructure capacity, particularly roadway infrastructure, as alluded to already. Johnsdale Road, which would carry much of the impact from this development, is approximately 17 feet to 18 feet at its widest. I measured yesterday afternoon with my tape measure. The current Raleigh UDO generally expects neighborhood streets to be anywhere between 27 and 36 feet, with the current standard being an average citywide neighborhood 36 from curb to curb. So essentially, we're half of what's currently modern day standards, meaning Johnsdale is less than half that width. To put that in perspective, I measured my driveway yesterday too. It's 9 feet 9 inches at its widest point. So essentially, driving up and down Johnsdale Road is like driving up and down your driveway, going into oncoming traffic at all times of the day when we fight Millbrook High School. We also fight trash day. You know, when everybody's cans are on the street, it's like a one-way street, playing chicken with one another, just for kids trying to get to school, us trying to live our lives, serving the community. Traffic volumes are already significant. A 2014 traffic survey prior to us receiving speed humps revealed that over 1,900 vehicle trips per day access our street. And as alluded to already, Millbrook High School uses our exit as our Johnsdale Road as our major exit for their school. Major heavy traffic during school days, after school activities lasting sometimes till 9 and 10 o'clock at night. Obviously, high school students don't drive slow. At the time in 2014, the average speed limit at 25 mile per hour on our minuscule street was over 37 miles per hour. We did have another traffic survey. I didn't write this in my notes. I can't pinpoint it, but essentially, I think they did it during Easter weekend or Easter break. So it revealed a severe decline in actual real-world numbers. When you're talking about 54 townhomes, Council alluded to it, that the traffic analysis for Raleigh states that it can handle it. Well, unfortunately, with townhome-type dwellings, the city only equates to 0.7 cars per dwelling unit. That's grievously low. When in all actuality, mother, father, and one child, that should be 2 to 2.5 cars per dwelling unit. Essentially, that's another 130-plus cars in that 4 acres that's going to be pouring out on our street with hundreds more trips per day on our roadway that already struggles with traffic and safety. Third is public safety. Johnsdale Road has a long history of safety concerns, near misses with your 4-year-old as you're walking down the street. We did have a young girl killed on her bicycle several years back. Last month, early February, one of the pedestrians, I think it was a high school kid, was run over on our street. These incidents highlight the risk of adding more traffic to a narrow residential street that has no sidewalks, no curbs, no gutters, no shoulders, a historic drainage ditch that any rainfall constantly overflows and overwhelms our drainage ditches. Most of our residents are on septics and well water, which when you flood a septic system, what happens? The groundwater, the refuse, then comes up to the surface. On the south part of the property, I don't have the map up here, you'll see a new apartment complex that was built less than 10 years ago. The neighbors that back up to that yard on Johnsdale are constantly fighting pooling water 3 to 4 inches at a time and are experiencing those overflowing septic systems and the compromising of the wells. This proposed density is only going to cause more problems. They are uphill of Johnsdale. Johnsdale flows south to north in its orientation. There was originally a creek that ran through our neighborhood that's since been backfilled, but as I said, with the drainage ditches and no curbs, no gutters, the water has nowhere to go other than into our yards, overwhelming our systems. Fourth is community and planning impact. Approving this rezoning would create an isolated pocket of higher density development surrounded by large lot single-family homes, raising concerns about inconsistency with land use pattern and potential spot zoning. Additionally, the neighborhood has not been presented with a detailed site plan nor development conditions satisfactory to our beliefs. Without defined commitments for traffic mitigation, stormwater management, or buffering, it's difficult for residents and council members to fully evaluate the impacts. We also understand Raleigh's discussion about the missing middle. We are the missing middle. We are the small families, small, larger lots, less than 3/4 of an acre, that just have a little bit of space between you and your neighbor that have worked hard for generations to keep that and pass that on from family to family. My wife and I, we've purchased her great aunt's house across our street on Johnsdale, and our hopes and dreams in the future is that our children can live there one day and experience the same wonderful community that we've had. These are not luxury estates. The development inside the city limits pushes towards density. Long-standing neighborhoods like ours should not be penalized and suffer at the hands of greed and high density. Finally, our community's already defended its character before. The last 2 years, we've defended a court case from a neighbor trying to rezone 3 covenanted properties within our Johnsdale Road at the end on the north entrance. That multi-year legal battle was recently ruled in our favor by a Wake County judge, preserving the neighborhood with single-family dwellings on large family lots. While this rezoning today is technically outside the neighborhood conditions because it was the old farmstead. It is directly in the center of our neighborhood, and it should not stand, and it would fundamentally alter our neighborhood and its eco-structure. The city's findings of facts exist to protect neighborhoods like ours, and based on these standards, this rezoning should be denied. Johnsdale Road cannot support any more dwellings beyond the R4 zoning our street was built for. We don't want any homes accessing our street. We don't want any construction vehicles on our street. They shouldn't be allowed to park. We have no parking signs throughout Johnsdale. It can't handle that any longer. We ask that Johnsdale not be an entrance for this neighborhood, that they access only Litchford Road, egress and ingress. We simply ask for 12 nice family homes on 4 acres. Give us what is pertinent to the neighborhood that meets the standard of our community, and there's plenty of money left in the game after purchase and all the development costs to meet that standard. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Hello, good morning. My name is Alex Heiler. I'm a homeowner on Johnsdale. And before I take a minute to speak, I'd like for everyone to stand up who came today from our community in opposition. We're a very diverse community. We have many families, young families who could not attend today, older population. My neighbor is 88, who just had a heart attack last week, so she's not able to join. But thank you for being here today. I moved to this neighborhood in 1999. And my parents are not able to be here today, but my parents' house is within they connect directly to this property that's being rezoned. My parents are still on well water, and their well is within 75 feet of the rezoning property. I love this neighborhood so much that I purchased my own home in 2020 here. I'm a beekeeper, and one thing that I absolutely love about Raleigh is it's a city that really meets the great outdoors. And what makes Raleigh so special is Raleigh is really green, right? So this area being considered for rezoned, it's vacant, but it's a living sanctuary. We heard earlier about an animal shelter. We regularly see foxes here in their kits, birds of prey, deer, groundhogs. It's one of the few remaining green spaces that offers refuge for wildlife, residents seeking quiet. It's really beautiful to walk by. Developing this land into townhomes will have irreversible environmental consequences. The removal of mature trees will disrupt the water table in Litchford Forest. Runoff, erosion, chemical exposure are real concerns, especially for those who rely on wells and septic systems. My neighbor Phil just spoke to, many of us are still on well. This is something that we absolutely depend. We pay taxes. Our wells cannot be contaminated, and the quality of water needs to be sustained. As I mentioned, our well is within 75 feet of the rezoning area. Clean water is not a luxury, it's an essential, and many taxpaying residents here depend on groundwater for their families. As Phil mentioned earlier, the rezoning would effectively split our neighborhood and significantly reduce remaining, okay, thank you. And reduce our remaining green spaces. Raleigh's prized because it's a city where urban living meets outdoors. As a beekeeper, I see firsthand how desperately pollinators need protected green space. When we remove their habitats, we don't just displace animals, we disrupt the ecosystems that sustain all of us.
Could you just finish the statement, please?
That was my sentence. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I said statement, sentence. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, questions for the applicant, staff, or the public? Commissioner Otwell.
Thank you, Chair Bennett. I was hoping staff could explain to me how there could be 54 units under the current zoning. I saw that in the analysis.
Yeah, on the R6.
Not the current zoning, it would be R6? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we ran an extra table for them under the R6 premise.
Oh, okay, sorry. I missed that.
And that would have been the maximum number of residential units under R6.
Okay, thank you.
We're out of time for the opposition. You had 10 minutes. Would the commission like to allow an additional 2 minutes so this lady could speak? We would do 2 minutes per side if we did that. Okay, without objection, Please state your name, and we'll give another 2 minutes.
I'm Sadie
Per side.
White. I'm 6605 Johnsdale. It's probably about 7 or 8 houses from this property of Mr. Johnson's, but I wanted to make sure that Mr. Brown did speak of the child that was killed. This area is a county road, and it's lumpy. Last time they resurfaced, my grandson and my husband were driving down, and we were going like this all the way down Johnsdale. He says, "Oh, Grandpa, do that again." It was like a roller coaster. So it's a county road. It has blinding curves and as well as hills. So I wanted to make that known, and we have a lot of high school students that walk from home to school. And it's not very safe for people, let alone cars. So just wanted to make sure that we understood the topography is not conducive to much more traffic than we are taking at this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, commissioners. Oh, yes, you have 45 seconds left. I'm sorry. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Snyder, and I live at 2368 Ravenhill Drive, accessed by Johnsdale. I did want to make note that there is a discrepancy and something that is incorrect in Mr. Marciano's presentation to you. Litchford Road is not 4-lane. It's 3-lane. There's one going north, one going south, and a turn lane. It is not a 4-lane road.
Thank you. 20 seconds left. Anyone else want to speak in opposition? Okay. Thank you. Now, commissioners, questions for staff, applicant, or public? No questions? Do you have a question, Commissioner Fox? Okay. All right, seeing no questions, I think we do have a question for the applicant, though, because it sounded like the applicant was asking for additional time to consider some revisions to conditions and more coordination with on one of the issues.
I mean, I guess I'd put it this way, we can do that work if this commission didn't have additional questions. We can do the work on the Johnsdale access as we move forward, obviously, because we can, either we can just work with staff and with council on that.
So is it the will of the commission to ask the applicant to add conditions, revise conditions, or are we ready to vote? Commissioner Neptune.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question with regard to city transportation. So I think this may be a question for staff and not necessarily the applicant. I'm just trying to better understand the context of Johnsdale and this access point to the high school. And I suppose specifically the question here is one of, I guess, jurisdiction. I mean, is this a city road, a city-maintained streetscape? And I suppose if so, I mean, we have a fair number of residents out here who are elevating, the issue with regard to that infrastructure. And apparently we lost a child, along the way. And so I'm just trying to better understand, has this been escalated to our colleagues with city transportation? Are there any conversations, any plans in the works to improve these conditions, to improve, I guess, access points for the high school? I think you see where I'm going with all this, but I'm going to really defer and lean on staff to speak to what are we doing, assuming this is a city street.
Right. So good morning. I'm Carter Robertson with our Transportation Department. It is a city-maintained street. We have done a traffic calming project there in the past. As was referenced in 2014, we evaluated the street. We saw that the speeds, the 85th percentile speeds, were up to 37 miles per hour, so almost more than 10 more than the speed limit out there. So we installed speed bumps out there. And then we reevaluated it in 2023. That analysis showed that the speeds did reduce over that period from before and after installing the traffic bumps. I did want to clarify, whenever we do an analysis like this within a school zone, we always make sure that school is in session when we do that analysis. So Monday through Thursday, not during a break. To the point of the fatal crash, this is something I'm unaware of. I can check with our Vision Zero team to see what previous analysis they have done regarding that. I do know recently we have received requests for safety inquiries along this road. I know they're going to go out and look at the existing conditions, and after that they're going to request spot enforcement from RPD. So they would go out there when school is opening and then when it's letting out. Most of the complaints we've heard is speeding, particularly among those school kids. So maybe getting RPD out there for some spot enforcement. And I think they're also looking to see whether a speed feedback sign would be appropriate out there, something to indicate the drivers, hey, you're going too fast, you need to slow down.
Thank you. I think there's a follow-up question from Commissioner Walters.
Has anyone considered putting sidewalks at least up to the access point to the school on Johnsdale Place?
I'm not familiar with any previous discussions. Right now, our kind of leading framework for future sidewalk projects is our active mobility plan, which was approved this past November. It has a prioritized list of sidewalks that we're going to use to go after for those future projects. Right now, this section of Johnsdale and Ravenhill, those are not on our list, but we can certainly add that to our documentation so that it's included in future priority lists. Litchford itself, though, is involved in our AMP list, and it was ranked highly due to the lack of connections and uses along this corridor. So Litchford on the east side is included, and we're looking at that for a future project.
If I may apologize to Madam Chair, I did not intend to manage the
That's
commission
okay.
table.
Carry on.
I think
Carry on.
as
You're
the
fine.
former chair of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission, I do care deeply about our streetscapes and making them safer for all of us who are trying to move or walk or bike, across the city. I have one follow-up question for the applicant with regard to the engagement with the principal. I should also mention I have a background of work that began in our schools, our public school system. So I'm just curious to hear if you could elaborate briefly, 30 seconds, on the engagement with the school principal or with Wake County Public Schools. I'm just trying to better understand the response to you as it relates to, managing, this traffic conundrum with the students.
Yeah, I mean, quick background here. I have experienced mixed success throughout the Triangle in trying to communicate about traffic issues with school systems. What happened in this case was I reached out to the area superintendents, the facility folks in the public school system, and then the principal. The principal replied impressively fast, as in like within 2 hours, which shocked me because I don't know how a high school principal can respond to anything outside of his school in 2 hours, but because it was a school day. But he basically closed the door on me, and he just said, "This is a vital part of us getting in. If we closed the Johnsdale access, which is right here, if we close the Johnsdale access, we would have backups on our other access points. I think they have 2 other access points." And then he also said, apparently one of the other concerns, and I won't editorialize on this because I don't know enough about it, but I think the seniors, maybe the juniors, are allowed to leave campus for lunch. Yes. And so there's a concern that if they didn't have this access point, which I think a lot of students use, that they wouldn't be able to quickly get back from lunch because they have a limited period of time. So it was not an impolite response, but it was not a, hey, we're open to thinking about solutions to it.
And it's not something that we can address at this table. I just confirmed with staff, we can't have a zoning condition that would cause Wake County Public Schools to do anything. So we do have a council member here today, though, so she's listening.
Which if I could just
We
acknowledge.
had, it's 11:30.
I will
and we
cede
have
comment.
two more cases that we have to hear. So I'm not making light of the issues, the traffic issues and the school and the safety issues, certainly I'm not making light of, but what I'm trying to say is that's not something that we as a planning commission can address through zoning conditions. So I don't want you to think that we could. We can elevate them so that council is aware and Wake County Public Schools, if they watch this, are aware, but we can't address it here. Is it the will? Yes, Commissioner O'Haver.
Well, before we do that, due to that issue, knowing we can't do anything about it, I would like to defer the case and allow the applicant to talk further about providing a condition on not cutting through or working with the city. So I'm not comfortable moving forward with this, and I'd like Mr. Coleman indicated that he was willing to do that, so I would like to defer the case.
My turn.
Hold. Attorney, can there be a zoning condition limiting access?
Yes. With that being said, I don't want to say in this case that would be the decision. That needs to be coordinated with transportation. There's a lot of things that go into those types of decisions. We have in the past had zoning conditions that say where access points will be versus not.
Okay.
But I don't want to say 100% certain that that is going to be the determination of transportation in this case. But I think giving time for everyone to work through that, you definitely could defer the case and see if there's an option.
Okay.
So
Commissioner O'Haver, then Commissioner Neptune.
cut through might not be the right word, but my point stands in. I want to keep moving. Let's defer the case so that the applicant has more time to discuss what we can do here.
Thank you. Commissioner Commissioner Burnett. Sorry.
Yes, this is for the applicant. I live towards the Northridge area, and I drive Litchford every day, twice a day at a minimum, going to work and going home. And the traffic is out of control. And I see when I'm headed in around 8ish in the morning, I see all the kids that are walking across Litchford Road down that street. And I'm not surprised, and I'm so sorry that someone lost their life, but I am not surprised that happened. And I think at a minimum, having the egress and ingress restricted to Litchford Road, I think that's just like a starting point. There's no way you should have any more traffic on Johnsdale Road. At a minimum, ingress on Litchford Road, because I think that in itself it would change the entire dynamic of their neighborhood. It would disrupt their quality of life, not only just create just more danger and just more traffic. I see that and the kids walking up and down the street. So now we're talking about bringing in construction equipment and with trucks and the people that are going to school and the people that live on Johns, right? It's all of that right there. So that's just I would love to see the applicant just do that as not even a thought. Ingress, egress on Litchford Road at a minimum. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Well, now it seems silly to do it after clapping. I was going to support the notion that Commissioner Burnett had brought up. I would too support the applicant deferring this to address some of the concerns on Johnsdale.
Anything else before we could defer the case?
Just briefly for the applicant, I would encourage connecting with Wake County's Safe Routes to Schools program and coordinating your efforts to mitigate traffic and the concerns in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, would you like to come back to the March 24th meeting, which is starting to look like a repeat of today's meeting? Or would you like to do the next?
I think the next one, in lieu of, comments, I believe it was Mr. O'Haver, that, there's a relatively short time to make any changes if we're coming back on the 24th.
So that next meeting would be,
April, whatever
April
the second
14th.
Tuesday in April is. Yeah, that would work.
And then your conditions would be due by
4th, I believe.
April
Or
4th.
3rd, 4th, yeah.
So that works for you.
For
today.
It'll either work for us or we'll ask for some more time.
Okay. So for today, then, we will defer this case until our April 14th meeting. Conditions will be due by April 4th.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, and thank you to members of the public who came out and spoke to us. We have 2 items left, and it's 11:35. I think. Who needs to leave by noon? 1, 2. We'll still have quorum. Is it the will of the commission to keep going and knock these out? Okay. Next up is rezoning Z5225, 3470 Blue Ridge Road. We'll hear from staff.
Good morning again, Mitra Shesh-Bradaran, with Planning and Development, presenting on Z5225. This is a request to rezone 1.61 acres located at 3470 Blue Ridge Road from R4 to RX3 with conditions, and your deadline for action is May 9th. Zoning in the area is predominantly low-scale residential, matching the existing zoning on the site R4. There are a few pockets of R10 and R6 zoning nearby. As you can see, generally, again, low-scale residential surrounding the site. A few instances of some open space and parks. There's the Glen Eden Pilot Park just east of the site, and then Laurel Hills Community Center north of the site. And then kind of moving away from the site, residential density does increase slightly with some newer townhome developments. And then kind of zooming out a bit more, the site is situated between the Crabtree Mall east of the site, so further up Blue Ridge, and then moving west, it's near the Lake Boone Trail Shopping Center and also the UNC Rex Hospital. So kind of between those 2 major city growth centers. But generally, immediately surrounding the site, predominantly suburban and single-family detached homes on similar sized lots. On the site today is 1 single-family detached home built roughly in the 50s. Here are a few looks at the site and frontage along Blue Ridge Road. No pedestrian facilities along this portion, and then also limited bicycle facilities, none really on directly in front of the site. And then the third image is showing, if you were to look at the site straight on, there are some pretty large front yard setbacks in R4, but there is a home back there. The applicant has proposed 3 conditions currently. The first is restricting residential density on the site to 20 units. The second is prohibiting retail uses. And the third is prohibiting the apartment building type. As we discussed in a former case, sometimes retail is permitted, but as a limited use in RX. This site is not located at the corner of 2 public streets, so retail uses wouldn't necessarily be allowed anyway. Here's a look at the change in entitlement between existing and proposed zoning. An estimated 11 units under existing zoning, and then up to 20 but that comes from the condition, that's capped with the conditions. And then generally a reduction in setbacks all around, moving from R4 to RX. The site is in an area that is less walkable than other areas in the city due to the limited pedestrian facilities. Residents most likely need a car for daily trips. However, the site is served by some transit and is considered more bikeable than other areas in the city on average. Residents in this area are less burdened by transportation costs and also have a higher proximity to jobs score. This is because the site's located close to Crabtree and then also the large UNC Rex Hospital site. The site is directly served by the Go Raleigh Route 2711 with service along Blue Ridge Road with a few stops within walking distance of the site. The request does not include any subsidized units, but it does add to the overall housing supply. It would permit a variety of housing types, smaller units on smaller lots, and again, in an area that does have some transit service. Residents in this area are less likely to be people of color, and they're also less likely to be low income. And then rents in this area have risen similar but slightly less than the citywide average. The request for RX3 is inconsistent with the low-scale residential flume designation for this site. The request is also inconsistent with the urban form map guidance. The site is within a frequent transit area and fronts a transit emphasis corridor, being Blue Ridge Road. These two things would generally, policy would recommend an urban frontage be included with the request, which was not, and also no similarly worded conditions. However, as we saw before, the area is majority suburban and low-scale residential, so an urban frontage maybe wouldn't necessarily make sense in future development of the site. Overall, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, though. A number of policies here that speak to compact development, capitalizing on transit access, and then also including or encouraging housing variety and density, especially in Raleigh's existing single-family detached neighborhoods. Two inconsistent policies are identified. These speak to the flume inconsistency and then also frontage inconsistency. Approval of this request by City Council would amend the flume map from low-scale residential, which is currently on the site, to moderate-scale residential, which would better capture that RX3 zoning. And it would look like that. Your deadline for action is May 9th. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. The applicant and those in support have 10 minutes.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Isabel Maddox here today representing Homes by Dickerson. Also with me today is Emily Rothrock of Site Collaborative, our landscape architect designing the site. Let's see. As Metra said, we're requesting R4 to RX3 conditional use. There's a zoning map. It is a fairly residential area. However, there are a fair amount of townhouse developments in close proximity. Our three conditions, we've capped density at 20 units, excluded retail. That was, the neighbors wanted to see that affirmatively. I realized it would be really difficult to do retail on this site. And also excluded the apartment building type. It is a townhouse objective here. And we think that if you look, we've got townhouses immediately adjacent, right? It's not showing up. Just immediately to the south. Then you have some to the, no, it's not showing up much. There's some up to the north of this site, and there are several to the east. So you can see them as you kind of look at this aerial photo. So I don't think townhouses are out of character with this area. Our conceptual layout, and Emily can speak to that in a little more detail. It's just a conceptual layout. We certainly do not have a fully engineered site plan. It does show buildings pulled up close to the street, consistent with an urban frontage. We did not include that as a condition for various reasons, which I'll get into. And I'll let Emily come up in a minute and just go through the site plan or conceptual layout that we have now. Two outstanding issues were they were inconsistent with the future land use map. But this isn't a frequent transit corridor, so I believe that encourages greater density and should overcome any inconsistency with the future land use map showing this is low density residential. This is a larger residential portion on a major transit emphasis corridor, so I do think a higher density is appropriate here. For the frontages are not typical on this area of Blue Ridge, or really, and the closest zoning frontage on Blue Ridge is a pretty good distance away. It's at the old Raleigh Shopping Center, which has a parking limited frontage, which doesn't seem even very appropriate for the transit emphasis corridor because you could be up to 100 feet back off the street with parking in between the building and the street. So that didn't seem to make sense. And the proposed development is consistent with the frontage. I think we're showing 10 feet away from the right-of-way right now, and absolutely no parking between the buildings and the street. So I think as a practical matter, we'll be consistent with the frontage. in summary, well, I'm gonna let Emily come up and just talk about the concept plan a little bit, just to give you a little bit better flavor for that. Emily, please step up and explain this.
Emily Rothrock, landscape architect with Site Collaborative. So as Isabel mentioned, this is conceptual. There's a couple of things to note here. The site has about 30 foot of grade fall from front to back, and so we wanted to understand the site a little bit more in terms of density and practicality of development. So we did go further into this site plan than sometimes we normally would. The townhomes shown here are pulled up towards Blue Ridge Road as close as we felt practical based on the existing sewer easement. That sewer is installed. The future developer built that sewer extension at the time of the improvements going on in the road, so they wouldn't have to open up the newly finished road. So that sewer exists, that easement exists on the property. That would be continued down the frontage to bring into the site. And so the intention is to bring these townhomes as close to the street with an urban feel that we could, while maintaining a reasonable distance to the surrounding residential development, but acknowledging that sewer easement. And then as we step down through the site, we're obviously showing these blocks of units. It will work with the grade and the drive aisles. It's intended to have rear-loaded townhomes on this concept, and so you'll see these are alleys as well as fire access. But the goal of this plan is also to have stormwater underground. There is a significant work to be done when we get to site plan in terms of how that's going to outfall, but the intention of this is to address the stormwater underground with detention. So I think the site plan in general, the goal is to create something that fits within the density surrounding, but also acknowledges some of the challenges with the site here in terms of topography and how we deal with stormwater. And the shape of the site, you can see there's ample green space surrounding. There's plenty of opportunity for little pocket niches for the neighborhood, and so the developer is really interested in keeping that look and that intention. So the density shown here is less than the zoning request, but it could be increased if the units became smaller or site plan allows.
Thanks. And with the RX zoning, we will be maintaining a buffer on the edges of the site that are adjacent to residential, which is 10-foot transitional yard, and I think 20 in the rear, and 10 on each side and 20 in the rear for our mixed use buffer. So in summary, we believe this case is reasonable in the public interest. The applicant, as Emily alluded to, the applicant already extended at its cost public sewer under Blue Ridge Road. There was an earlier consideration that they were going to do a different development here that ended up not working very well, but in any event, they knew they wanted to develop this property, and it was going to be cheaper and more efficient and better for the city to go ahead and extend it. So they have extended the sewer, which will provide public sewer on that side of Blue Ridge in that location. This is directly adjacent to a townhouse development. It does increase dwelling units in our area. It's in a frequent transit area on a transit emphasis corridor. It's in close proximity to Rex Hospital and all the medical facilities nearby, the Art Museum, Old Raleigh Shopping Center, other retail, also public parks and greenway like Laurel Hills and Glen Eden Pilot Park, the greenway that comes very close. I can't tell you the distance, but it's very accessible. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So with that, we'd appreciate your recommendation for approval and certainly available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Reserving 2 minutes and 38 seconds, unless there's anyone else in support who wishes to speak. Okay, those in opposition have 10 minutes. All right, seeing no opposition, commissioners, do you have questions? Commissioner Fox.
A question for staff. I just wanted to clarify. I believe at the time of site plan, a sidewalk would be required along Blue Ridge.
I'll let transportation staff answer that.
Thank you.
Yes, normally yes, but there is a project along this corridor that is building sidewalk on the southern side of Blue Ridge. I think it's in construction right now, might be finished by the time this rezoning is confirmed.
Thank you. Given that, Chair Bennett, I'm ready to support this at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner O'Haver?
I have a question for staff. Can you describe for me the difference between the height requirement that is existing for R4 versus the height that's allowed in RX3?
Yeah. So looking at height in R4 for a single-family detached home, it would be 40 feet or 3 stories. And then for RX, it would go up to, the RX3 would go up to 50 feet in that 3 stories.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I did have
Commissioner
one for
Walters.
transportation. I'm just looking at the aerial. It looks like there's a multi-use path on the opposite side of the road. Is that correct? A new multi-use path? And then standard sidewalk cross-section, both north and south on the side of the road that the proposed rezoning is. Is that correct?
That's correct. That sounds right. And then there'll be a median put in for the roadway. Right now, it's 2 lanes, not divided. So there'll be a center median with that project as well.
Okay. So I think some of the original analysis, planning analysis, might not be exactly reflecting some of the walkability that we're seeing that just happened. I just want to kind of clarify that.
Commissioner O'Haver, did you?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm okay with the height. I'm assuming, question for the applicant, that eastern boundary is going to need, because of the topo, is going to need, all that existing vegetation is going to go.
I don't know that that's going to necessarily be the case everywhere. It's a significant amount probably will, depending on the height of this wall and how much of a slope we can get to match grade. I can't answer that right now, and we also need to have a stormwater outfall somewhere, so.
Yeah, my only concern, and again, just to be consistent, is that house to the east, but I think you've got the 10-foot transition yard
Oh,
plus
you're
another.
talking about this side here?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am, the bottom.
Yeah, it's turned. There's no north arrow, but that's the south side.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here, this house right here.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
feel like there's going to be enough, but it sure would be good if you could maintain some of that existing vegetation there, but I'm not going to hold this process up for that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, no further questions or comments. I will close the hearing, and I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Fox.
In regards to case Z5225, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated March 10th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment. This recommendation also includes an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Do you have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Oh, okay. Okay. That was unanimous. Thank you. Last item, rezoning Z126, 307 West Martin Street, 311 Commerce Place, and 322 West Davie Street. We'll hear from staff.
Hello. For the last time this morning, Nitya Radharan, Planning and Development, presenting on Z126. This is a request to rezone 3 parcels located at 307 West Martin Street, 311 Commerce Place, and 322 West Davie Street, roughly 1.28 acres, from DX5 with a shop frontage and DX20 CU to DX20 with conditions. This case is, or the site is within the Depot National Register Historic District, so it will appear tomorrow at RHDC for their recommendation to City Council. But your deadline for action remains the same as May 9th. Zoning in the area is predominantly DX. The site is located downtown, and so DX surrounding it and currently existing on the site today with varying heights between 5 to 40 stories. Here to look at the site and where it sits in relation to downtown. It's just southwest of Nash Square, and it's surrounded by several commercial and high school residential uses. It's also just east of Raleigh Union Station, like less than a quarter mile, so within walking distance of that. And then here is another look at the site, and just like with some existing businesses and uses today, just to kind of help orient yourself, near the Wake County Justice offices, Baderi Chocolate in the Pit area, across from the Dillon, and then also again within walking distance of Raleigh Union Station. As I mentioned before, the site is in the Depot National Register Historic District. The two existing structures on the 307 West Martin Street parcel are considered contributing structures to the historic district. Here's a few looks at the site and its frontages. The first one is on West Martin Street, so leaving most like downtown and heading towards Union Station. And then the second is the intersection of West Martin and Commerce Place. And then the third is the rear of the site. So the 322 West Davie Street portion, it's just a small tail, and this is a sliver of this portion is what is currently zoned with the DX5 shop frontage. And then two more looks at the site, specifically Commerce Place, which is included as a frontage with the request. I'll note that the applicant team has an active custom streetscape request in with a different planning team. That's a separate process, but will also go to City Council for review. I can answer maybe some like limited questions on this, but generally the idea is to build out Commerce Place as like a pedestrian-oriented area, so kind of capitalizing on what already exists there with benches, lighting, things like that. And then the South Dawson Street frontage is also included with, the site also has frontage on South Dawson Street, sorry. So just to kind of show you where it is. And one of the conditions speaks to how that frontage will be developed, which I'll get to in a second. The applicant has proposed 6 conditions. The first two speak to historic preservation. The first is requiring the preservation of the first 85 feet of the contributing structures on the 307 West Martin Street property. So measured from West Martin Street, the first 85 feet of those existing buildings should be preserved, and the remainder of that structure can be removed. And then no additional height is permitted on this portion. And should any exterior improvements be made, they should use similar materials to what exists in the Depot District today. And then the second condition is speaking to the first. In the event that the contributing structures are damaged or destroyed for some reason, the entirety of the contributing structure can be removed. And then in its place, a structure cannot be greater than 5 stories. And again, it should use similar materials as to what exists in the Depot District today. And then in terms of moving away from historic preservation specific conditions, the third condition prohibits some uses: the adult establishment, pawn shop, self-service storage, vehicle repair related uses, cemetery, detention center, and then dorm and fraternity and sorority uses. Conditions 4 and 5 speak to future development of the site. 1 dogway station shall be included, as well as a plaza, of which 50% shall be open to the public. And then condition 6 would require that the South Dawson Street frontage of the site be developed with Main Street streetscape standards. That's explained in the UDO, but generally this is a wider sidewalk, tree plantings, again, to promote like pedestrian-oriented development. Difference in entitlement between existing and proposed zoning. I think the high level here is entitlement is roughly staying the same. There's a slight reduction in like the estimated number of units, but relatively the same between existing and proposed. And then a slight difference in setback requirements. With a shop frontage, there are those build-to requirements, but those are pretty similar to what's required in DX. The majority of the site is DX, so not a lot changing here. And then again, just to look at commercial entitlement and the difference between existing and proposed, we see a slight increase with office square footage and a slight decrease with retail, but again, roughly the same entitlement between existing and proposed. The site is located in downtown Raleigh. This is where we see some of the city's highest walkability and bikeability and transit service. Residents in this area have a variety of multimodal options for accessing things, so lower transportation costs. And then there's a higher proximity to jobs. The site is within one of Raleigh's major employment centers. Service to the site, transit service to the site, there are a variety of Go Raleigh routes that serve the site within walking distance. And again, the site is also within walking distance of Raleigh Union Station. It also is included in some western and southern BRT station area planning as well. Overall, the request does not include any subsidized units, but it would add to the overall housing supply. It would permit a variety of housing types, smaller units, smaller lots, and again, in an area well served by transit. Generally, there's a higher percentage of people of color living in this area and a lower percentage of low-income individuals. Rent in this area has increased more than the citywide average. The request is consistent with the future land use map designation of community mixed use for this site. And it's also consistent with urban form map guidance. The site is within a frequent transit area and also downtown on the urban form map. Though no specific frontage is included with the request, future development plans for Commerce Place and the South Dawson Street frontage kind of speak to what an urban frontage would do. And then in terms of the West Martin Street, the preservation of that first 85 feet kind of maintains that like shop frontage facade, so high transparency, buildings closer to the street, and encouraging like retail-oriented uses. So with that preservation, that helps with consistency there. Overall, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan as well. A number of policies here, these speak to reducing vehicle miles traveled through mixed-use development, creating more high-density and mixed-use opportunities in downtown, as well as encouraging pedestrian-oriented uses. And then there's also some downtown-specific and historic preservation-specific policies that are met by the conditions. And then there's also some area plan guidance. The site is within the Downtown West area plan, some consistent policies there for encouraging mixed-use development while still preserving the historic and unique character of this portion of downtown. And then the two inconsistent policies that are identified, the first is in the downtown chapter. The downtown chapter includes, designates some streets as primary retail streets and recommends a shop frontage be included with requests. Again, that's not included here, but I think future development, because of the conditions, is likely to mimic that shop frontage. And then for the Downtown West area plan, there's a map, and that kind of maps that this site would be no greater than 4 stories. I'll note that this map and this plan was written in 2004, long before a lot of the city's transit-oriented development policies come into play. And development today is much higher than what is reflected in most of that map for this area plan. Another reminder, the case will appear tomorrow at RHDC for their recommendation to council, but your deadline for action is still May 9th. The applicant is here to answer questions as well as me.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. The applicant and those in support have 10 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Bennett and members of the Commission. I'm Jamie Schwadler with Parker Poe, here with my colleague Walker Abbott, as well as the applicant in this case, Turnbridge Equities, represented by Jason Davis, who's here with us, as well as Brian Purdy with McAdams. This request is a straightforward cleanup to the 2022 case that many of you served on the Commission and heard. We're doing two things with this case. We're trying to apply those conditions across the board to the city-owned parcel that Turnbridge purchased shortly after the case was approved. It's adjacent to Commerce Place, and we want to have a uniformity of those conditions applying. And then we're also making adjustments to the historic conditions to ensure that this primary retail street does not contain a vacant retail building, and that's what's been sitting there today for 3 years. So some lessons learned in the historic preservation conditions, and we've struck in a balance and bringing those forth with you today. For context, if Turnbridge sounds familiar and this case sounds familiar, in 2022, the city was seeing a lot of activity downtown, and Turnbridge was fortunate enough to participate in that in going through the site plan with the creamery, which is now coming out of the ground, with the historic preservation on that site, as well as working with RHDC on this site and on the Seaboard Depot. So they're no stranger to the importance of historic significance and providing that balance with new housing downtown as well as height where appropriate. But in this particular case, these 3 parcels sit, of course, just catty corner to the new and soon to be improved Nash Square. They're the home of commercial but mostly vacant buildings today and a large surface lot. The previous rezoning was for DX20 with the conditions in 2022, and the city-owned parcel carried forward a DX5 shop front. Mitra did a great job explaining the Depot Historic District, and I'll try just to hit the highlights of that as we go. As it was in 2022, the future land use map and the urban form map both support height and density and growth in this area. That has not changed. The community mixed use designation is surrounded by the central business district that you can see there in the kind of darker purple, and suggests the DX designation and the 20 stories are appropriate here, just like they were in 2022 when several other cases were approved surrounding this site with 20 and even 40-story designations in the DX. And so turning to the urban form map, Mitra did a great job of talking about the investments in transit in this area. The frequent transit area designation was appropriate then. It's probably even more relevant now with the advancement of the BRT, the proximity to Union Station, and exactly where you want people to be able to live, work, and commute by foot downtown. The site is in, went backwards there. The site is in the downtown west gateway, and you can see that red star there in the corner of the Depot Historic District. And the 2 policies cited on the screen really embody what we're trying to do with bringing this building out of the ground and preserve the historic nature, but have some height kind of to the rear. And that's promote mixed use and development along this primary retail street. It's been designated by the city. And then try to redevelop these surface parking lots into something that can be more housing, more retail, more amenities for the folks that live and work and want to be downtown. As Mitra mentioned, there is a kind of a legacy 4-story designation here that predates a lot of those investments in transit. Now the land use table would suggest a higher height, and the urban form map would suggest even higher, so that 20-story is consistent. And the staff report does a great job of discussing all of that. Here are the historic buildings. So they are historic, but they have no standalone historic designation. So they're not landmarks like Creamery was. And what that means is before the 2022 case, they could have been demolished. The reason they can't be demolished today is that we put those voluntary conditions on ourselves to preserve the building for that first 85 feet. It was unconventional then. It's still one of the most stringent preservation techniques that you've seen in the city. But what we found is that's conflicted with our ability to tenant the space. And because this is a primary retail street, we want to make sure that those 2 policies have the appropriate level of talking to each other, the historic preservation on the one hand, and making the tenancy vibrant and not vacant. And so the conditions that we are bring forward a majority of those historic preservation conditions with several tweaks that I'll go over in a minute. The rest of the conditions, as you may remember from the prior case, have not changed. We're doing DX with 20 stories, consistent with what's on the site today. We would bring that city-owned parcel in the bottom by Commerce and Davie in line with those zoning conditions, and also change that from the DX5 to the DX20. The reason we're not pursuing shop front on that parcel, or need to drop that shop front, is that with such a skinny parcel, it's very difficult to meet the stringent shop front conditions. But as Mitra mentioned, the combination of having the streetscape condition on Martin plus us filing the streetscape plan, which should be to council sometime later this spring, has that combination of what you otherwise would see in shop front and the actual physical location of the buildings will preserve, have that relationship with the pedestrian realm and the build to that the shop front would otherwise have provided. So we're providing kind of a character of shop front, just using different tools. The other conditions that you see on the screen would remain the same. The dog waste station that citizens advocated for, the public plaza, the plaza that was a minimum of 50% open to the public, as well as the prohibited uses that have become common to see downtown. The main change that we're talking about then are those 2 changes, bringing the city parcel in line with the rest of the zoning so we can have one cohesive set of rules, and this change to 1B. So we're still preserving the first 85 feet of the contributing structures and maintaining the overall massing. We're still making sure that any replacement materials or improvements in C would have the same materials visible from the right-of-way that are similar to other contributing structures. What we're changing is that the preservation today requires preservation of exterior brick walls and associated masonry openings and repair or replacement of fenestration. What does that mean? It basically means we intended to preserve the entire facade with fenestration, the windows, the casings, all of those things. And when you look at trying to rent these retail buildings and make this the vibrant retail space, we haven't been able to get tenants that want to stay in that older space. They want a little bit of name recognition or storefront of creativity and viability. And you see that all throughout downtown, wanting to make sure that their storefronts have a little bit of their signature. And so we're trying to do that and preserve some of the flexibility while still preserving the vast majority of these historic structures. The 85 feet is the majority of the building, and most of those, and anything would be replaced, would have to follow that 1C. All of the remaining preservation conditions that were endorsed by both RHDC and this commission in 2022 would remain the same. This plan shows how those conditions would be playing out in plan. So the historic preservation kind of brown area you see there is the first 85 feet. Then you have a constructability zone. Think of that as taking off the back half of the building. If you wanted to do a restaurant with more modern equipment or things, you'd need to kind of have some areas for service. So that area is why we kind of picked that 85 feet. The pedestrian zone would be where we'd have some of the open space requirements and the plaza. And then the mixed-use building is where the yellow, where we'd have most of the height and the bulk of this building that could be up to 20 stories. These pictures show how the public plaza was envisioned. You see a lot of inspiration from kind of narrow spaces that could be appropriate here in the urban area and borrowing from inspiration in other kind of urban cities. And then, as you see in the staff report, this is overwhelmingly consistent with the comprehensive plan. The staff report on pages 11 and 12 does a great job of highlighting all of those consistencies, especially trying to make retail work in this area and what's appropriate for that balance between historic preservation, which we are absolutely still committed to, and making this retail street not full of vacant retail boxes. And with that, we know this request is relatively straightforward, but there could be detailed questions. We're happy to answer that. I know you've been at it a long time today. We are going to RHDC tomorrow, and because we do expect a discussion of those historic preservation conditions, but they're largely the same as what was voted on by this Planning Commission. We would appreciate a recommendation to go forward, to continue to have a discussion with RHDC tomorrow, and then, of course, we'd evaluate the totality of both of those recommendations before we reach council later this spring. Approving or recommending approval today will allow us to unlock this really key area with a high walk score in close proximity to jobs and allow us to make it more vibrant than we're able to with the best of intentions of those existing conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing. No, I'm sorry, I did that already. It's been a long morning. Those in opposition have 10 minutes. Okay, seeing none. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Burnett.
Hey, Jamie, does this include the Raleigh Denham building or a portion of it?
No, it does not. I think it's a block over. Yeah, across Commerce Place.
Okay.
We're on the east side of Commerce, that's the west.
Did I see another hand? Commissioner Walters, Commissioner Otwell, Commissioner Fox.
I was just curious why you added that skinny parcel to the south to this rezoning as a part of this request.
I'm happy to do that, and we can talk a little bit about the purchase if that's the impetus. But we tried to go forward and purchase that site and then do a site plan using the existing conditions as well as that existing zoning on the city-owned parcel. And what we found is with that skinny parcel and the shopfront designation, it really forces you to do something that's kind of a vertical, odd-shaped building on a very skinny parcel, and just couldn't make it work. And so tried to avoid a rezoning if we could, but just weren't able to do it. At the same time, the needs of the tenants were speaking volume, so we decided to try to do it all together and recombine and bring one case forward.
So is there intent to build something on that skinny portion of the rezoning?
Jason, would you like to come up and talk about that?
Yes, our plan is to create retail that would front Commerce Place consistent with the streetscape plan that we're currently advancing through council.
On that skinny portion?
On the skinny
How
portion.
deep is that?
It's 25 feet.
25.
So really, single story is what works best there, and it'll be consistent with the existing warehouse buildings on both sides of Commerce Place as well.
I see. Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Otwell Fox, then Omakaye.
All right, thank you, Chair Bennett. I have a couple questions for staff, if I could, please. I'm not as up to date on the Main Street streetscape. Can you elaborate a little bit on what's required there, please?
Yes. Give me 1 second to pull it up, sorry. I don't have a specific slide with that included. Generally, it's wider sidewalks. I believe an overall streetscape of 20 feet. Wider sidewalks, tree plantings required. Give me while my computer loads. Okay, yep. A streetscape width of 35 feet, a minimum 10-foot sidewalk, and then a minimum 6-foot planting area.
All right, thank you. Does the DX zoning come with any build-to requirements?
No build-to, just setback requirements.
So I had some problems with the frontage designations and conditions associated with this site. From what I can tell, there's no build-to that would be required on any of these facets. It looks like Martin Street is not have a required build-to because it's doing a Main Street streetscape.
That is for the South Dawson Street frontage.
I'm sorry. Let me get my map in front of me.
Yeah, the Martin Street.
Yeah, Dawson. So on Dawson, it's the Main Street, right? And so that will not require a build-to on a very large section of the street. And the preservation requirement is great. I would love to see those persist, but in the event that they're demolished through damage or other act of God or the other things that are listed in the application, there are no requirements for frontage or build-to. And having those buildings get damaged when you're demolishing half of them is, I'm not going to say it's likely, but it's a very common occurrence. And I'm frustrated. I voted against moving out the streetscape review from Planning Commission, and this is why, because we're being asked to make a decision based on something that we don't know that may not happen. And so we don't have any guarantees on Commerce Place either. I'm going to have a hard time voting for this unless we can beef up the build-to requirements along at least three portions of this. I understand the skinny section down at the bottom. I'm happy to leave that out altogether. More concerned about the northern end of Commerce Place and Dawson Street. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox.
If I'm not mistaken, and I could very well be reading this incorrectly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, it does look like there's a minimum and a maximum building setback when you have a commercial building on the main street type.
Could you say your question one more time?
Looking at the commercial building type in a main streetscape, it looks like there may be a minimum and a maximum setback.
They're proposing a main streetscape type, which is it's 8.59 in the UDO. Is that where you're looking?
Yeah, 8.5.9 streetscape types. If you look at C for a commercial building.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Apologies, not meant to be a quiz. I know this is like way in the weeds.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I see what you're saying. I think then, depending on the type of building, I think yes, that could be required depending on the type of building that they develop. That would, I think, be figured out during the site plan review phase.
Okay. And just for my own education, there's a mixed-use building type and then there's a commercial building type. I don't know what their proposal would fall within.
I don't want to assume. I think I was leaning more towards mixed use, but I'll let the applicant team speak if they know what that portion of the site would have.
Thank you.
Did you hear the question? Okay.
Was that a question for the applicant?
Yes. With the,
Hi. Sorry. I think reading that section wrong. Thank you, Carter. If you want to explain it, that might be better.
Yeah, looking at the streetscape types in 8.59, those aren't referring to any building types. So we're only looking at A for condition, whichever condition calls out the main street type. So type C, the main street, and the mixed use, those are different standards that wouldn't apply for this condition.
that's not exactly clear to me why that is the case. However, I believe you.
If I may, I'm looking at the ordinance myself. So 8.5.9 streetscape types starts with A, Main Street, and then B is mixed use. Those are mixed use street types, not building types. And then C is commercial, which is commercial street type. And it's agnostic of the building itself, but these are options for streetscape types.
If I may. So there are other streetscape types which do propose a minimum and maximum building setback. I guess that was a better way to ask my question.
Yes, and so for commercial, for example, the build to is 20 feet to 50 feet, right?
Any other questions? Commissioner Makaye? I thought you had a question. Okay. So are we, okay.
I like to be unpredictable. Are we maintaining the number of stories that the building can be at its current state? You're not asking to change that in the rezoning. It's already currently rezoned to possibly be able to build up to 20 stories, but you all are looking to build like 5, are you saying?
It can, the overall site has the 20-story designation, but within that first 85 feet of Martin Street, we wouldn't be able to change the building massing at all unless there was a fire or, and those, the conditions in which we would be able to destroy it, or it would be destroyed, are not our own. It's, you know, kind of an act of God. So we're not intending to change anything within those first 85 feet in terms of the height.
Right. But behind that, how high are you all thinking about going?
20 stories, and we can have the right to do that today.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Haver.
Jamie, so the 85 feet, it starts on Martin and runs down Commerce Place. So all of Martin is maintained on the 2 structures, and you're going 85 feet down Commerce. I think I saw that on your graphic.
That's right.
Help me understand the 85 feet, because it's to Commissioner Otwell's point, that's a portion of the building, but I guess you're doing that because you need that 20 feet to construct the 20 stories behind it.
Well, so it's the majority of the building, and what we did when, and you might remember, this was the historic Clearscapes building, and so we worked with them on what's the appropriate way to preserve the building and the majority of it. And Fred kind of helped us look at the fenestration on the exterior of the building and how some of the beams and structural supports lined up in different bays. And when you look at the 85-foot depth, you're saving a significant portion of the bays, and then kind of having kind of back of house stuff of what's used there today that's not as significant. So we're saving the most historically significant portion of the building by doing the 85 feet. And then the back of house part is really just to make sure we have room for that constructability, but also for access if we have transportation has needs of getting vehicles in and out, emergency vehicles in and out. They might have radii that we might need to meet, and so we might have to mess with that back portion, not the back half.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I feel like you guys are doing this because it's my last meeting, so you're making me stay as long as I possibly can.
We don't want you to go. Every minute.
We'll talk about that later. Any other questions? So, Commissioner.
We could go for drinks after.
Commissioner Otwell, is there a condition or revision to a condition that you want to see, or is that being addressed in the streetscape plan that we can't review?
The streetscape plan could very well address the concerns I have along Commerce Place, but I don't know what it looks like at all, and it's still in development. It would make me comfortable to see a shop front or a build-to along Dawson Street and a condition for preserving some sort of build-to if the historic buildings are not able to be preserved.
Jamie, is the applicant willing to consider that?
I think we can consider it, but I don't want to say that it's going to be a zoning condition without, the streetscape plan is a new tool, and I don't know what I don't want to bind staff's hands on how that would look.
I'd be happy to leave Commerce Place alone, and we'll see how that streetscape plan goes. But I'm more concerned about Martin Street and Dawson Street.
I think we're open to it. I would prefer to hear what RHDC says tomorrow, and if you're willing to vote today and say we want the applicant to study a build-to on Dawson and any treatment on the streetscape there, I think that's completely appropriate if the will of the commission would be to give that specific instruction and move the case forward, and then see what we have from RHDC, and from there kind of evaluate whether we need to change the conditions before we get scheduled for a public hearing before council, because I do want to make sure we're not conflicting with the streetscape plan, and that could be at council as soon as possibly May. So, and I don't know if staff has any opinion, but I don't want to prevent us from reacting to staff's comments on the streetscape plan.
If we vote today, I'd have to vote no, but I would appreciate that effort either way.
If you voted no and noted that as your reason. Commissioner Omakaye?
I wanted to make a suggestion that if they have time to come back to us after they speak to the historic preservation community, council, because this is a historic area, and sometimes our decisions kind of cross over theirs if they haven't had a chance to speak with them first. So I would like our decision on the planning, if possible, to be held off to get further feedback to see how the historic preservation community views this project.
Is that the will of the commission? It sounds like the applicant is asking us to move it. So what's the will of the commission? Commissioner Fox?
Because we just saw this case as recently as 22, I'm comfortable moving forward and making a recommendation from the perspective of the Planning Commission, acknowledging that the RHDC is meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Others?
Can the applicant remind me, you probably said it, what is the reason on trying to rush this through versus coming back to the next meeting? Help me understand why I'm not suggesting we do it, I just want to understand why.
Yeah, it's not necessarily rushing it. We want to make sure that this marries up with the streetscape plan and with all of the cases that are being, some cases were delayed today and kind of getting backed up as you go to council. It'll be more confusing for council if we're asking them to decide the streetscape plan in isolation from this case and vice versa. So we're trying to have those go forward. The RHDC, as you know, is a new policy that didn't used to happen after a planning commission. It used to happen before. And so I think holding it up just so we wait for them is going to set a policy that you just wait and each time. But we're certainly willing to consider both as we move forward to council and modify. I'm not sure coming back on the 24th we'll have a way to incorporate the frontage in a way that'll satisfy you, Commissioner Otwell, without knowing when we'll get the comments back from the streetscape plan, which is still in review. And so I just want to be careful that in, again, best laid plans, we're not tying somebody's hands.
Clarification, did you just say there's a policy now that RHDC meets after Planning Commission? Because if that's the case, then we'll always be saying, can it come back to us? And we don't want to start that, do we?
I would feel comfortable with staff explaining what that position is.
Staff?
I don't want to misspeak.
They're conferring.
So we have been coordinating between Planning Commission and RHDC Raleigh Historic Development Commission publication so that the RHDC has the benefit of the published staff report, which we deliver for you. And I understand what you're saying about that inherently results probably in a two-touch for the Planning Commission. But it seemed from a support of the Historic Development Commission helpful to provide them with a staff report for their review.
Okay. so then if it's the will of the commission to continue this, we can. Just know going forward, every time you have something that's going to appear before RHDC, unless this changes, you're going to automatically be asking the applicant to defer it. And I think the applicant should be aware of that.
You do not have to ask for that. I mean, that is your discretion
Well,
as a
we will
body.
be automatically deferring.
The commission, the Historic Development Commission makes their recommendation to City Council, not to you.
Right.
If you want the benefit of that, of course you would ask
Right.
to continue the discussion, but that is not a requirement for you.
Right. I'm just making a note of that. Like Commissioner O'Haver said earlier, it's a timing thing. So applicants will be looking at being deferred if they have something going before RHDC, because we're saying we want the benefit of RHDC's memo. So, yes, Commissioner Fox.
I acknowledge that might be uncomfortable for some folks, but know that the information that comes from RHDC and the information that comes from the Planning Commission is used in the deliberation of the final decision makers.
Right.
So in a position where we are not the final decision makers, I'm comfortable acknowledging that in a motion and just saying, absence of information from the RHDC, these conditions are in the public interest, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that too. I don't know how much my opinion matters anymore, but I say that because we've had several cases where we went against what RHDC said anyway. So I think we already sort of have our minds made up. It didn't sound like we had any concerns about historic preservation. If we had concerns, then I would say, let's see what RHDC says. But it seems like our concern was more with frontage, which RHDC isn't going to take up. So if we're okay with this from a historic preservation perspective, my individual recommendation would be for us to move it out. And that doesn't have to be a standing policy for every time there's something that goes to RHDC. Maybe there will be ones where we want to hear their opinion, but for this one, it sounds like we sort of know how we want to move, and council will look at our recommendation and RHDC's recommendation, and they'll make a decision. Commissioner Walters, Commissioner O'Haver, you're looking at me, so I think you want to say something too.
Yeah, I just want to say I support what you all are talking about. I'm ready to move this forward. I also have some concern that we, by adding any conditions about frontage, would complicate, be redundant with the streetscape plan that's already in motion, especially on Commerce Place. So I just want to tread lightly there. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Haver.
Yeah, I want to say they're preserving from a historic standpoint. They're preserving Martin Street and the majority of the structure down Commerce. And I just will go on record for a third time that there are many times I don't agree with the RHDC, so I'm not concerned about having their memo in front of us. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So it sounds like, who wants to hold this until it's gone before RHDC? Let me do it that way. So who's ready? Everybody's ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right then. I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Fox.
In the case of Z126, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated March 10th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment. And I'll add to this a willingness of the applicant to look at build-to conditions along Dawson.
Second.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further
Second.
discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That's Commissioner Otwell. And would you like to state again for the record? Go slow because I'm typing.
Sure, okay. The frontage and build-to conditions are not adequate to the zoning district. And we don't have any information on the streetscape plan, which is a major component of the request.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. That concludes our new business. Next is other business, beginning with the report of the chair. So as you all know, this is my last Planning Commission meeting. So for one last time, I'll ask you to indulge me so I can just say a few words one last time. I want to begin with gratitude. First to City Council, thank you for the opportunity to serve and for the trust you've placed in me through both appointment and reappointment. Public service is not something I take lightly, and I appreciate this opportunity tremendously. To our staff, thank you for the incredible amount of work you do behind the scenes to make sure we can do our job thoughtfully and responsibly. Your professionalism, patience, and commitment to this city make our work possible, and I'm deeply appreciative. To my fellow commissioners, past and present, thank you. Serving alongside you has been an honor. The discussions at this table are not always easy, but they're always important. I'm grateful for the time, the thoughtfulness, and the care that each of you bring to this work. I also want to thank the many applicants, neighbors, advocates, and everyone who takes time to come before us. Whether we agree or disagree on a particular case, your willingness to show up, speak up, and engage in the future of Raleigh is what makes this process meaningful, and I appreciate you all. One of the greatest gifts of this role has been the people I've met, many whose paths I might never have crossed if not for this work. I've learned so much from all of you, and I'm grateful for the connections and relationships. When I first joined the Planning Commission, it was just before life as we knew it changed. The murder of George Floyd, racial unrest, and a global pandemic. Those events forced many of us across professions and institutions to reflect more deeply on issues of equity, access, and opportunity. I'm so proud that this body and this city were up for the challenge. Thanks in part to those discussions, we have our equity and climate section of the staff reports. Now, as my tenure comes to a close in 2026, we find ourselves again in a moment where our communities are asking hard questions about fairness, belonging, and who gets to thrive in our cities. We're right on the precipice of a new comprehensive plan, and I'm confident you will again keep these issues front of mind during your discussions and recommendations. I hope that during my time here, I've contributed in some small way to encouraging us to think about equity, equitable development, and the broader community impacts of the decisions we make. Serving in this role has truly been one of the most rewarding and fulfilling experiences of my life, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be one voice among many who have helped shape Raleigh. Because the decisions we make here don't just shape buildings and land, they shape opportunity, they shape access, they shape whether people can see a future for themselves in the city we love. And if we keep people, all people, at the center of our work, Raleigh will be a place where legacy residents and newcomers can thrive as neighbors. It's been my honor to serve. Thank you. And now report of the members.
Seriously? How do I, I'll talk to you later. Okay. All right. Pulling it back. We do have an item on the Committee of the Whole.
Yes.
And I believe, does it coincide with me passing off that chairperson duty?
Excuse me, could you guys keep your voice down a little bit, please?
That is a good question. So the new vice chair is currently not at the table. But I will do a quorum check for the people who are here right now. So Committee of the Whole meeting on March 26th at 4 p.m. And yeah, you don't care. God.
Yes, I agree with you that Commissioner Cochran would be vice chair of the commission and chair of the Committee of the Whole at that time.
That will be her inaugural meeting, where she will chair the Committee of the Whole. However, from the members sitting at the table are people available for that time, March 26th at 4 p.m. Just raise your hand if you, I'm just doing a quorum check.
You said March 26th at 4?
Correct.
I might be able to do that.
1, 2, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll assume, and we'll assume the vice chair is there as well. So we are barely making a quorum. Everyone wrap themselves in bubble wrap between now and then. Okay. That, I have no other comments. It has been lovely being your co-captain, and I knew you before Planning Commission, and I will know you after Planning Commission, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.
I'd like to request a little bit of community assistance because my computer died and I don't have my calendar. But I'm pretty sure we have a text change committee meeting this Thursday at 4 p.m. That would be March 12th at 4 p.m.
March 18th.
Next Thursday.
Yes.
Next Thursday, Wednesday. See, this is why I need help.
You're still the chair of that committee at that time.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, March 18th, Thursday, Wednesday? Wednesday at 4 p.m.
Say it all again.
All right, let me use my glasses this time.
Or I will whisper to you.
All right. Next meeting is March 18th, 2026 at 4 p.m. in the Raleigh Municipal Building in room 305.
And might I add, because I didn't say it, everyone who is not on text change committee is considered an alternate for text change. Your future chair, Otwell, will work through assignments for committees and everything. But for right now, if you're on text change committee, you're on. If you're not, you're considered an alternate. So you might be asked to show up if someone can't, so we can have quorum.
Speaking of quorum, could we get a quorum check for next Wednesday, March 18th at 4 p.m. for the
Put my
text
hand
change
like
committee?
this,
There's three of us.
Yeah, you only need three, right?
That's three. All right.
Possibly.
You don't, are you on text change?
I don't know.
She's an alternate. You just appointed her.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm not. Then never mind me.
She is?
Yeah.
Take that off my calendar right now.
Commissioner Neptune?
Oh, sorry. It has been a privilege to serve with you, and I have no further report. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Yes, ma'am. I am not available for the text change committee. I don't know if I still need to send an email for that. And yeah, won't spend a lot of time, Nicole. It's just, we used to meet regularly for coffee, but I think it's appropriate we need to find some time to go meet for a cocktail.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnett?
Chair Bennett, you have been an amazing guide and teacher throughout the process. So thank you, and we'll definitely grab that coffee.
Thank you. Commissioner Walters?
It's been a pleasure serving with you in the short time that I've been overlapping with you. Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you. Commissioner Omakaye?
Well, I said what I said to you the last meeting. It has been a pleasure serving with you. I do look forward to continuing our relationship and continuing to talk to you. So I'm happy about your future with the Housing Commission. I think they're getting a really, really great leader. I have another question, though. Did we vote on who the chair and vice chair were?
We did at
Was
our
it
last
via
meeting.
email?
No, we
Was
did
that-
at our last meeting.
Was
I
it the
don't believe you-
beginning of the meeting? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Thank you.
The chair is Chair Otwell and Vice Chair Cochran. Okay, we'll have the report of the Assistant Director.
Thank you for your service to the city of Raleigh. Thank you for your service. You've been a great colleague to me. I really appreciate you. And I have a totally inadequate gesture of appreciation for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For your pride wall.
Is that the land use map?
Yeah, that is the land use map. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, it slips out. It'll come out of that thing if you want to frame it or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's not laminated. It
Okay.
just feels like it's laminated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right, for the last time, we're adjourned.